All right, good evening, everybody. It is 6 p.m. This is our Tuesday, November 12th regular meeting of the Town of Spencer Board of Aldermen. And we are officially called to order this evening. We have all board members except for Ms. Moody present this evening. For those of you that maybe didn't see, Ms. Moody's grandmother just passed away, and so we offer our prayers and thoughts with her and her family as they grieve the loss of her grandmother. As a reminder, our board meets on the second Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m., which is why we're here tonight. And we also have a pre-agenda meeting the Thursday before that, and we had that meeting last Thursday at 5:30. And while the pre-agenda meeting purpose is to review the agenda for the upcoming regular meeting, to also set our consent agenda, to hold public hearings and receive other presentations, our regular meeting tonight is so that we can actually focus on the action items from the agenda that we set on Thursday, as well as hold or receive departmental reports and act on other business. So tonight is our meeting where we act on action items, and so we have a number of those this evening. As a reminder to the public, the meetings are open to the public and held here in the Hilda B. Palmer Boardroom in Town Hall at 460 South Salisbury Avenue. Those meetings are also streamed live through the internet, and they can be accessed there. And then a printed copy of the agenda packet, the entire agenda packet, is available for viewing here in the boardroom for the public. And then the meeting agenda minutes and a link for the live meetings are available on demand at our Town of Spencer website. With that, Alderwoman Sledge, will you please give our invocation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I invite you to reflect with me a few thoughts. As we gather today, I'm mindful of the sacrifices made by our veterans and their families, and grateful for the freedom and prosperity we enjoy as a result of their service. Bless our troops, past and present, who have protected our nation and its values. As we may gather together with family and friends later this month, let us remember the true meaning of Thanksgiving, to count our blessings, to share them with others, and to give great thanks to our gracious God. Let us remember the less fortunate among us and strive to make a positive impact in our communities. May our tables be filled with love, laughter, and a spirit of generosity. My prayer for our staff and board is to have the knowledge that we need to make the best decisions for all of our citizens, for our community to have the grace to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. And in everything, give thanks. Amen.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, board, you have your agenda before you that we set last Thursday at our pre-agenda meeting. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda requested this evening? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda before you?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Howell. All in favor? All right, all opposed? And our agenda is approved unanimously. We will move to recognitions, and Mayor Pro Tem Patty Sechrist has two recognitions to make this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Is Jesse here tonight? Okay, good. I'm so glad you got to come. It's like to meet you. And I want to double check. Is it pronounced YN? Is that correct? Okay, I just wanted to be sure. But anyway, this is Jesse, and he is student of the quarter, Jesse YN, for North Rowan High School this year. He is number 4 in his class. He's a senior and has a GPA of 4.271.
Wow.
He is also dually enrolled. He's not only at North Rowan High School, but also at Rowan Cabarrus Community College. So Jesse has a full plate. While at school, his teacher said he is always willing to help any student or staff member at any time. Last school year, he played a vital role in helping us roll out a pilot laptop program at North Rowan High School. Jesse, you better be glad I wasn't there and you had to teach me. But students do step in lots of times and help the teachers with technology. because many times a lot of the kids are ahead of the teachers. He helped all of the students set up their new devices without hesitation, and they said they are so thankful for having him here as an amazing North Rand High School Cavalier. So congratulations, Jesse. Brian, for bringing him tonight. And I think Jesse received a plaque at the award ceremony, correct? Okay, good.
Congratulations. Thank you all for being here this evening as well.
Thank you very much. And next, I want to recognize Coach Leland Peacock, who passed away recently and was buried on November the 5th. I first met Leland in 1963 at the very beginning of our freshman year at North Rand High School. He was part of the 8th grade class group that was coming from East Spencer School. I was part of the Spencer School 8th grade. We were joined by students from Dukeville School. And that was the last year that we had students at all three of those schools, and they joined them together to make the freshman class at North Rand High School. He completed our class. This completed our class when Dukeville joined us. We all became friends and great classmates and set off on a great high school experience. Coach Peacock and I graduated in 1967 as part of North Rand's first integrated class, and that is something we are very proud of. Along the way, he became well known as a star athlete in football, wrestling, and track. He was also very supportive of the fine arts program and supported Mr. Dunlap in a variety of projects. He even designed and created the set for our senior musical, The Music Man. After graduation, he went to Elon College where he played football, and he went on to coach there as a student assistant, and later at Catawba as a graduate assistant. In 1978, Leland announced he was coming back home to North Rand High School as an assistant football coach, girls track coach, and freshman girls basketball coach. Back in those days, coaches were utility men or women, and they coached whatever needed to be coached and learned how to do it. In football, Larry Thomason, head coach, assigned Coach Peacock to be defensive coordinator and defensive line coach. He had never worked with defense or played defense. He was always offensive, but he learned how to do it and did an outstanding job. The Cavaliers had outstanding teams by 1982. They went 11-1, and I think they had 8 games that season where they were not scored on. And then also again in 1985. Later, he coached offensive line for Coach Sechrist, so he wound up back doing what he had originally intended to do. Coach was always tough on his players, and he expected so much of them, but it was toughness tempered with compassion and empathy. He really was a gentle giant. Leland attained 2 master's degrees, 1 in PE, 1 in driver's ed, and he probably taught almost every student that went through North Rand High School in the 70s and 80s driver's ed. He worked for Rowan Salisbury Schools for 30 years and made a significant contribution. He also served as an ordained minister, a deacon at his church, East Spencer Baptist, and a volunteer fireman in his hometown of East Spencer. Leland accomplished so much in his lifetime. He molded so many North Rand students and athletes into not only becoming successful athletes and students, but becoming contributing and successful students. His influence continues to live today. It has expanded far from Shaver Street and East Spencer, and he's left a lasting legacy on this North Rand area.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, Board, are there other recognitions this evening? Okay, I just want to make one, and we'll hear more about that during the manager's report, but I do want to recognize and acknowledge the meeting that we had with some concerned citizens about infrastructure and a few other things last week. Town staff and myself and Mr. Muhammad and Mr. Miller had a chance to meet with a group of citizens last week, and had a very productive meeting, I think, and looking forward to some of the things that are going to come out of that meeting. And Mr. Francis will give an update on that during his manager's report. So those that are watching, tuning in this evening, you may want to stick around to the end of the meeting. Make sure you hear an update on the manager's report. Okay. We'll move to public comment, and we do not have anyone signed up for public comment this evening. And so we will move on then to our consent agenda. Board, you have 3 items on your consent agenda that include the approval of last month's minutes and then 2 administrative items. Is there a need to pull any items from the consent agenda for further discussion? And if not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
All right, it's a motion by Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? All right, all opposed? The consent agenda is approved unanimously. All right, the next item is to receive an update on various infrastructure projects.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. I would like Joel Taylor to come forward and we'll talk about a few items that we've got some updates on. And that includes the 2nd Street project, what's going on with 17th Street project, and also some information about, in general, some improvements we're looking to make with our street maintenance. And I guess what I'll say in general, and then Joel can get into it, is we are underway with the second Street project, with equipment being on site and materials arriving. Joel will give an update as to where we stand as of today. And our 17th Street project is moving closer to getting put out to bid to be constructed next year. The permitting on both the larger project and the smaller CCAP is finally moved along, as we've been waiting for that for some time. And so, Joel, I'll be quiet and let you take it from there. And thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening.
Good evening. On the 2nd Street project that the manager just mentioned, we do have equipment on site and all the materials are pretty much there except for the risers. They're still waiting on the risers. They've got the bottom boxes, but not the pieces that go between them. So hopefully they're going to be there tomorrow or Thursday is what I was told. So as soon as he has those in hand, then he'll begin digging and get that knocked out and get it fixed. So the 17th Street that he mentioned, we have the two projects on 17th Street. You have the CCAP, which has been lingering for a while. Just talked to Levi, and we have the first review and the permit is done. The second permit, I have to read this because I didn't know the actual name. The neighboring jurisdiction review process, that's what it's in now. Usually it takes several weeks. He let me know last week that we were in that process, so that as soon as that gets done, then we can basically pull our local permits just for soil and water, which Chris is already ready for those, so we can move pretty handily with that. The 17th Street, talking to Laura today, as Peter said earlier, let me find it. They're looking at sending the plans for our review. Next week? Is that right? Or by the end of this week? I think it's by the end of this week. And then once we review the plans, then they'll be starting to get the bid packet together to submit, get it out for bid. So construction can start. We also have the stormwater inventory that's going on at this time. I think, is it not the end of next year? Is that right? When it has to be done?
I think the timing is to go through this current fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we should be getting, plans and stuff like that. Well, it's not actually plans, but documents as far as, outlining our actual infrastructure and what the shape is. That's what that intention is. So The street paving, and we've had some discussion, in-house about this. Normally, we wait 2 years to get a good paving project and get enough money to hold, you know what I mean, to basically get enough contractors to get the bids. If you don't have, $100,000 project right now is not going anywhere. I mean, you'll get very few people to bid on it, and if you get anyone. So usually we hold it, but we've had discussions with in-house, maybe a discussion point for you guys, but may move forward with doing more of a more aggressive, like patching, instead of a full pave. That way we can do like, curb to curb in certain areas, and we can move a lot faster that way. It's not the greatest, but at least it would show progress. As trying to catch up with the deteriorating streets that we do have. Of course, that would separate it from the priority list that we have. That wouldn't necessarily follow that, because we just pick out the pieces of the roads that need to be done instead of the whole street. Once we do that, then we can move back into the priority list and keep on, with the street done. So, like I said, that may be a discussion point for you guys to see what your thoughts are on that. And then just to touch base is sidewalks. We normally do our sidewalk campaign in the spring. Really not a capital improvement plan, to be honest. It's just more, we've been concentrating more this time on the historic, like the walking tour, smoothing that kind of, picking blocks. Started around the library and working our way out, trying to get some of that older sidewalk fixed. So that, and we're allotted, or we allot $12,000 a year for sidewalks through the PAL bill.
How much does that typically?
I
How far does that
usually, piecing everything together, you can do about a whole block, one side. Now we don't, if the pavement's in good shape in an area, we cut or go around it, of course. But if you put everything together that we did this last time, it was, I think, right at 11. And no, I'd say a little more than that. Okay, about a block and a half, to be honest.
Is that paving or sidewalks?
That was sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
For the 12,000 a year that we do. We do more replacement than repairs in the areas that we're doing, because it's settled, sunk, that kind of stuff. It's really not much we can do as far as grinding. There are some areas, especially on Main Street out here, that we could benefit from grinding. We can look at any avenue with that whatsoever. That's not an issue. But we have been doing a lot of the older areas, that old, what I call pebble concrete. You see the rocks up on top of it? It just shells off. That's the areas that we've been concentrating more, getting some actual footing down.
So we've obviously got our paving assessment. Do we have any type of assessment that prioritizes sidewalks?
No.
Okay. That's something, it's up to the board, but that I would ask that we consider implementing, so that we have a handle. That would be easy enough, I think, to put together, but we have a handle just on where we have sidewalk coverage, where that sidewalk coverage is sufficient, maybe where a condition is not, and then also where we don't have coverage. Because I know there are some areas that long-term we need to address. And I know some of that is in our EB 5861 project and a few things like that, but I know there are other areas of town as well. And I think that's just, it's part of our overall infrastructure when we're talking stormwater, when we're talking streets, right. We need to be talking sidewalk as well. The other question I've got related to street maintenance, or I guess maybe it's more of a philosophy, is, we've talked about this, that the patching, that sort of thing, is not the most effective use of taxpayer or PAL bill money. But the reality is, because we get so little PAL bill funding from the state, that we do have to wait multiple years between between paving contracts to
Right.
be able to package those. We've also talked about what it would look like for all of the municipalities to potentially pool their resources to put out a single contract to try and get better unit prices and things like that. So I think there's some things there, but the maintenance piece of it I think is critical. I don't think what we're saying is completely switch
Right.
from repaving to maintenance. It's got to be a balance of it. And I think the reality is we're maybe doing more focus right now on the repaving and not focusing as much on the maintenance. And so things like crack seal and cold patch are going to be critical the longer we have to go between paving projects. So that, I mean, the big thing is if we have a pothole, we need to patch it. If we have significant cracking, we need to crack seal it. Basically just to prolong the longevity of that existing pavement until we repave it. I think that's some of the complaints that we've heard is we don't want, what we need to do is figure out a way to get ahead of it so that our road conditions don't continue to deteriorate, so we can at least hold status quo and then begin to upgrade by repaving where we can.
Let me ask a question, if I may. I believe that we've had some subdevelopments who opted not to put in sidewalks, and in lieu of that, paid for money to come back to the town. Do we have a record of how much of that has come back to us?
That's going to be a Steve question.
We had one project, about $17,000.
We do have a record though of, in the ability to
Is
make use of
is that bundled into the maintenance fund, or is it just sitting there as capital improvement?
I do not think that's currently programmed in. It's more about building up. If a project comes along and doesn't do their part, they build the in-kind that can contribute towards our fund balance in a sense. So as we would need to appropriate that into an expenditure if we were going to make use of it.
So based on some of the concerns that we've had, I mean, I think those type of payment in lieu of would make a lot of sense to directly appropriate those towards sidewalk replacements and maintenance throughout town. Because if we're saying a new subdevelopment doesn't have to have it, or a new development doesn't have to, sometimes it makes sense that they shouldn't. You're building a sidewalk to nowhere. With the needs that we have infrastructure-wise, it makes a whole lot of sense to direct that funding specifically for sidewalk replacement. I don't know what the board's thought is on that.
I will say that last year we we had one check for $14,000 that come in for in lieu of, and we put in sidewalks last year, and that's where that went to. So it was in lieu of here, and we put it into sidewalks in other places. So, but I will look into that, and I will make sure that you guys know exactly where that was in the finances and stuff. So you can see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Board, other questions or thoughts or input on updates?
I get your trepidation. I understand that, and I appreciate the citizens who brought those concerns to light with infrastructure. They're not wrong. We have some really rough spots road-wise and sidewalk-wise in our town. But I think we have to be careful balancing, being the proverbial, hand in the hole versus stopping the whole dam from collapsing. There's a balance there. And, for example, I can think of a couple intersections, or maybe one in particular on 5th Street I avoid it if I can. But then, John on 3rd Street might have a problem, and Susie on 6th Street might have a problem, and all we end up doing is patching holes. And then we get a town full of holes on the road. So, I mean, I think maybe if we're going to do that, we need to identify the 3 or 4 spots where we really, really, really need a patch. And, maybe we do, try to do 3 or 4 areas a year, and then again, continue to refocus on paving, because I don't want to get in a situation where all we're doing is just fixing, right? That's not helpful either, and ends up wasting money in the long run.
But again, I mean, I think what's critical is when you're maintaining an asset like that, is that you do have a renewal plan, which is repaving, but you also have a maintenance plan, and that's where it comes to patching or crack sealing and things like that. And again, it's a balance, right? One of the things that we've talked about with that citizen group is doing quarterly community walks with them to be able to identify things like that. And that gives us a good idea of where some of the worst spots are and things like that. So I think it's going to be a collaborative effort between our staff, us as board, and then our citizens as well, as we work to prioritize those.
Within the last week, I had a citizen come to me and tell me how much she appreciated us finally being able to get the sidewalk fixed that she had talked to us about 2 years ago, where it had buckled and was raised up. And she said that the town was able to get that fixed last year, and that she really appreciated it. So.
And that's the unfortunate thing with the way the finances work and everything, is there is a limited amount that we can do, and the amount that we need to do is always far greater than the amount that we can do it.
Right.
And so that's where the prioritization piece comes into play. I will say, I mean, just based on what we've seen, things like 2nd Street and things like that, I mean, those are critical emergency projects that I think we need to make sure that we find a way to aggressively and urgently move those forward. There are lots of good reasons as to why that's just now getting fixed with what, some of the issues that have happened. But I think, we need to learn from it so that going forward, we can avoid that. Hopefully we avoid a sinkhole the next time, but inevitably we're going to have those. This condition assessment that we're doing of our inventory should help that. But we need to be able to be ahead of it and be responsive, and I know funding's a piece of it, but we should never have a sinkhole that sits for a year. I mean, I think that's the moral of the story that comes out of it, is we need to find a way to aggressively move on it and get those things fixed. Even if it means having to make sacrifices budget-wise in other areas, those are critical needs. Other thoughts or input?
May I add one more thing? I think mostly for the folks listening at home or who are seeing this or may see this, I know some questions are raised, and why are we doing the park if we can't fix our roads or whatever? Both through private, benefactors, and for whom we're very grateful for, and for state grants and all this, for ARPA funds from the federal government because of COVID, we're able to do some things that otherwise we would not have been able to do. We probably wouldn't have a new fire truck, a new trash truck. We probably may or may not have that part. And we've done that by spending literally pennies on the dollar of our collective tax dollars to have those things. So us having a park does not really translate to having a paved 5th Street or having a trash truck or a fire truck. It's not we could not do one and have the other. No, we just wouldn't have either. So, I hope those concerns, I understand them, I get it. There's an optic issue, I get, but in very real terms, we would, without Mr. Joe's efforts and all the efforts of the folks who've helped us outside, we would not have those things but for those efforts. So, it's not an apples to apples comparison, I don't think.
Agreed. If we could just get the state to place as much interest in funding road and sidewalk projects as they do on park and greenway projects, we'd be in much better shape. I just want to say thanks to Peter and Joel for making the time to meet with the citizens last week. I thought that was really helpful, and then for your time preparing the updates on these and keeping things moving. It's much appreciated. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is to consider authorizing the manager to execute a second amendment with the Spencer Partnership Special Event Agreement. Mr. Franzese.
Thank you very much. This is a second amendment, as we heard. We have an agreement with the Spencer Partnership, which has been for the purpose of putting on Winterfest. We amended that a few months back to create a few adjustments to it for this year only, because that event is going to be taking place on private property. So it was bringing some of the other property owners here in the shopping center into this year's Winterfest program. And now the Spencer's Holiday Caravan Parade has come about, and it is going to be another piece of the Spencer Partnership activities. And so this is to amend our agreement with them to incorporate the activities of the parade into our ability to provide in-kind services and insurance coverage, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Grenzies. Board, are there any questions on the amendment of this agreement?
Mr. Mayor, if I want just to, based on Thursday, Mr. Manager asked about whether I am able to vote on this or not. I know we talked about it earlier, but just for anyone following along at home, I was told I can. Is that right?
So long, sure. And the determination is whether you're financially benefiting and you're not.
No, not at all.
Your primary
Probably
obligation
costing
is to
it.
vote.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless there is a conflict,
Okay.
and there is no conflict.
Just want to make sure.
And that question is just because you've been involved with the
Exactly.
planning
Yeah.
committee.
I'm not on the board, but I've assisted with them with their preparations.
Yeah, and it might be helpful just to say what the Spencer Partnership is.
Yeah, that would be helpful. You want to discuss that?
So they are a nonprofit organization that was formed many years ago, and I believe did a number of activities. And in recent years, their primary activity has been about the promotion and production of the Winterfest event. But again, now this new parade that's been formed is going to be another one of the activities within the umbrella of the partnership. And hopefully in the future, there could be other activities that organization takes on. I think in its past, it was quite active in some downtown redevelopment type activities, some working with merchants and those sorts of things. But yes, so that's who they are, is a local group with nonprofit status.
And so, many communities like ours have a nonprofit organization that runs these type of events, and the nonprofit status, allows them to handle funding and everything and logistics, and also, solicit donations and things like that. And so that's what this group is doing. It falls under that 501c3 nonprofit umbrella. And so because of that, they are willing and able to also take on the parade in that capacity. And so, our relationship with them as a town is basically one of collaboration and support and working together with them as they do these events that benefit our community. So,
Thank you.
yep. All right. If there are no other questions, we will entertain a motion to authorize the manager to execute this second amendment with the Spencer Partnership.
So moved.
The motion by Mr. Muhammad.
Second.
Second by Ms. Sledge. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And that's approved unanimously. All right, the next item is to consider establishing consensus on the advocacy project submissions to the Rowan Municipal Association. Mr. Franzese.
So this was an outcome of the most recent municipal association meeting, and that is a group that meets quarterly. Each municipality takes turns hosting these meetings, and currently the town of Landis is the host. And at the meeting that took place, I think that was still October when that happened, there was discussion about a purpose of the association being the creation of a unified advocacy agenda. Currently, we have leaned on our local chamber for those efforts, along with other groups like Central Line and the League. And the discussion was around the thought that maybe not all of our municipal needs are getting filtered through the chamber's efforts, and it would be that our local legislators provided feedback to some of the folks that asked about this idea that it would actually be helpful to have this unified voice and some form of a living document that all municipalities say this is where we want your focus to be. And so what the ask has been is for each of the members to submit a two-part project list. One would be some cross-cutting ideas or goals, and to submit about 5 of those, and that from all the ideas submitted, there would be then from the association consensus on 3 to 5 priorities, and then also for each municipality to submit 3 projects, unique projects that we could use legislative support, whether that be funding or otherwise. And the goal was to identify a top priority and then 2 additional. And so what you have in the packet represents a suggestion about maybe a conversation starter about what those could look like. And there's also an attachment of the most recent league legislative goals document. Of course, there's a new one in the works, and the same can be said of the chamber. Actually, the legislative goals from our local chamber are about to be reworked again as we're approaching new legislative sessions. What I'll say just for reference is we do not think currently in the current environment in both the state legislature and the U.S. Congress that there's going to be a high propensity of earmarks or directed spending out of either legislative bodies. But it's still good to maintain the relationships, keep our priorities out there, so that in the event there is funding available, that our projects are ready to go to receive funding. But again, there are other issues out there that aren't just about a special earmark towards our community. I'll note that we've talked about the transportation funding. I would suggest that's a very high priority of all municipalities, that our current method of allocating the POW bill and giving the funding towards local governments across the state is becoming antiquated and not keeping up with the pace of what things cost. And so some support from the General Assembly and rethinking that and improving that would benefit everybody across the state.
Okay. Board thoughts, comments? You'll see in your agenda packet, we do have a memo from the town manager that outlines some of the top needs that the RMA countywide has identified, as well as then 3 projects unique to Spencer that we could potentially recommend that we identify as needing legislative support. Any thoughts or comments on those?
I think they're all good points as far as what he's recommended, as far as the possibility of the fire department addition or replacement, and also this Northern Rowan connector project that we should consider for future growth.
And so for those following along, the 5 ideas for countywide projects or advocacy goals that would benefit all communities, there are 4 that have been kind of identified to date. One would be to modernize and expand state transportation funding streams for construction and maintenance for municipal or town-owned and then state-owned secondary roads. And that's one of the things we've been talking about that's so critical. Supporting the adaptive reuse project here in Spencer to create the Rowan Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. That, while housed here in Spencer, is something that spans across the county and benefits all of our municipalities and the county for people that may take advantage of that facility. And then the third is to invest in facilities to host youth sports tournaments to result in an economic boost. This was something that was really pushed by the Grand Quarry mayor and the Landis mayor as well. And I think there's some interest by the county in that as well. And then to support signature community events that enhance the quality of life and quality of place in each community of Rowan County. And then the three items that are unique to Spencer would be to support funding of critical public safety facility improvements such as the Town of Spencer Fire Station Expansion or Replacement Project, which we've been talking about, which would need appropriations or legislative support or significant grants to help fund that. And then the second being the Northern Rowing Connector Project that benefits both Spencer and East Spencer. That includes things like the new interchange at McCandless Road, the Longfield Road improvements for traffic, the new industrial access road off along Ferry to Hackett, and then the Yadkin River District redevelopment, as well as our EB 5861 Greenway project. And again, this is one that's being advocated for on the Chamber's legislative agenda as well, or priority project agenda. And then finally, to continue investing in capital improvements at the North Carolina Transportation Museum, and then partnering with the town, Rowan TDA, and Rowan County to continue funding for wayfinding and placemaking projects to improve visitor experiences and spending such as signage, public art, and public parking upgrades. The one thing I think that I see that's missing here in all of this is something that's, and this may be generally related to all of our municipalities, is in addition to the transportation funding, I think we need to identify stormwater infrastructure as a priority. And I think that's not unique to Spencer. It's in all areas, but that is an area through the state that funding is limited. And especially for small municipalities like ours, it's limited at the local level as well. So that would be something I would suggest that we advocate for, perhaps that we add that to the 5 ideas of countywide projects.
And what I'll, just to make sure you understand, what I was attempting to write in the memo, Mayor, was these were some suggestions about what our board could establish consensus to then submit. These weren't necessarily, of course, the decision by the RMA yet, but
but I think they're good.
Well,
personal opinion.
In terms of the stormwater project, do you think some language around the we are benefiting from the LASSI, the local assistance for stormwater infrastructure, which
unfortunately that funding has dried up and gone.
So perhaps some language around, restoring a more recurring model of funding similar to that program, because that certainly was a huge investment that is helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be very beneficial. Board thoughts?
I think first it's relative to something we discussed a few moments ago, not only in Spencer, but at the county level and the state level, with the League of Municipalities taking a similar stance, is that infrastructure is critical to towns, especially smaller towns. So it's not just something unique to us. I think that the signature events concept of community planning across the county and trying to get something in every locale once or twice a year is something that should have been done a long time ago. That's a brilliant idea.
And coordinating it, right, so that we don't conflict with
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. I really like that.
Other thoughts? What's missing, or what might be on here that might not be a priority?
What do we know about what the North Carolina Transportation Museum has in their pipeline? Do we know? I mean, I know that's a state facility.
Yeah, Peter and I have a monthly collaboration meeting with Kelly Alexander to be able to kind of keep her up to date on things going on in town and coordination, as well as what they have going on over there. So they are in the midst of some significant infrastructure upgrades, but they have some significant needs as well. Right now, I think they're going through upgrades of the master mechanics shop. They just got done with a clear story window replacement on the back shop, and a significant roofing project on the roundhouse, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so they're doing a lot to kind of keep up with their existing infrastructure, but they're also taking some of the unused buildings and now rehabbing those to try and expand their service offerings and some of the things that they do.
And the two projects that in that vein are the what they call the power plant, I believe, the old power plant building. I think that's going to be an opportunity for an event type space or exhibit space, but then also the car repair shed, some improvements there that will help them with their operations to have more space to store cars or work on their fleet, their rolling stock. So those are some of the major projects, and I believe most of that there was some one-time appropriation a few years back that funded the majority of that, and it's mainly a need to advocate for ongoing investment there, at the facility.
I do know, and having spent time with them during the Chamber's legislative trip to Raleigh, the biggest issue they have right now is getting funding within their budget for additional staffing that they need. Their programs continue to expand in their offerings and their facilities, but they are not being given the positions that they need to fully staff that, which sounds like a common theme.
Yeah.
Something we know about, but I think that's a big issue for them right now. And I think really it's the state right now, cultural resources are picking certain facilities to really put money into. Tryon Palace was one of those that they just recently put a whole lot of money into, and additional staffing as kind of a restart to that facility. So I think anything that we in the county can do to help advocate for them for things like staffing that they need, as well as infrastructure upgrades, is important, because it benefits us, it benefits the entire county from a tourism perspective.
So that C could be adjusted to add in supportive operational expenditures as well.
I think that would be important.
I guess I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with this question, but where are we with the innovation incubator?
We have a meeting tomorrow.
We have a meeting.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have the initial assessment and pro forma and all that has been done for the facility. To achieve the full vision of what needs to be done over there is about a $6 million price tag. And so, the big question out there as well, who ends up taking that on, right? And so what we are looking at, and I think the intent for tomorrow, is making sure everybody's still on board with developing some sort of business incubator, an innovation center, and perhaps we start small, like that we prototype it. We scale it up from something smaller that could be, a retail lab here in our lease space and some community programming, making use of the community center, so that we can prove that it works, and then be able to sell that to investors that would be willing to put the money into the building upfit. About half of that cost is building upfit, just building things that need to be done, and then half of it is in what would actually have to be done to get it ready for programming for an innovation center. But it's moving along slowly.
Is the county still involved in this thing as far as?
Yeah, they are to an extent. I think that's going to be the discussion tomorrow, is to try and circle back on making sure that we've got commitment from all the parties to continue to move that forward. I think it's going to be a much easier sell, starting small and scaling up from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and I ask that just because, from a broader perspective, and the chamber probably does a lot of this, and if they do, then I'm not saying the right thing, but I think there's still lots of barriers to starting a business. I have an idea, I want to do something. A lot of people think it's a great idea, but then how do I turn that into, where do I go to get a loan? How do I identify a usable space that's affordable, that I can actually negotiate with the owners? What's insurance cost? So, I wonder if, depending on how that meeting goes, if there's ways to modify this to say, work together with our other municipal partners to just almost make like a registry or some type of a single point of information to get that, okay, you're in the southern part of the county, you think, okay, China Grove, right? And let's put you on someone in China Grove who can help you answer Okay, where do you go? Who do you talk to? That's just, it's those questions that stop people from opening businesses or, they think they have to run up to a certain place and pay a lot of money and then they're only open 6 months and they're out of business. And then they don't ever do it again, right? And so it's stopping that problem. And luckily, we don't really have that here. I mean, things are opening up and they're staying here, but I know that's not always the case everywhere. I'm just a thought.
And again, that was the underlying reason
Sure,
for
yeah.
wanting to start that. And, we said we need that here, but then as we got to talking with other municipalities in the county, we realized that's really needed throughout the county. So I think you bring up a great point, because what is most needed is the programming, not necessarily the big, huge infrastructure space and the co-working space. And so that, I think, is a starting point for how potentially we scale that up is, we look to getting the programming in place, providing the opportunity for folks to come in and learn about that. And that could be a relatively small space. And not investing in all the co-working and everything like that at this time. So I think those are going to be things we discuss tomorrow. But your point is well made and heard in that the programming is the piece that's most needed.
Is there an entrepreneurship program through the community college that we might
There
tap
is,
into?
well, there's the small business.
Small Business Association. I'm
Yeah,
familiar with
through
that.
and so that's really where that is. But I think, that's one of the pieces is there is that gap in programming for, entrepreneurs and things like that. So I think it's going to be us leveraging that partnership between the county, the chamber, the community college, and those resources to make sure that we kind of have wraparound coverage with the programming that's needed. What we don't want to do is duplicate things that are already being done. We want to be able to collaborate and add to that. What we want to do is fill any gaps that there are, and I think there are some significant gaps right now. Any other priorities? Anything unique to Spencer that we haven't identified?
Overnight accommodations.
That's a great point. And I think that might fit into item C, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have the 8th Street ballpark here that could be part of a youth complex where tournaments come to Rowan County.
Yeah.
But there's no place for people to stay overnight.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I think that's a great place where that would fit is in item C. It's really focusing on tourism. And one of those keys is that we do need overnight accommodations.
Were you speaking about C with number 2, or C with number 1 is the investing in facilities to host youth sports?
Well, I think,
so,
hey, I mean, I think that it kind of goes with C and D.
Okay.
And as in item 1, and then item C and item item 2. Because the reality is, if you're wanting to do those things, all of these things, you've got to have a way to house people that are coming into town. Anything else, board?
I don't guess we could get a public parking facility overnight. We're going to need parking in about 4 weeks.
It's essential.
Well, and I mean, that's a great point, right? Because that's something that the Transportation Museum struggles with. And, the reality is during most parts of the year, parking is not an issue in town or at the Transportation Museum. But during big events, it is. And the more and more of those that we have, it's going to continue to become an issue, which is a good problem to have, but a problem nonetheless. And if you notice, item 2C does specifically call out public parking upgrades. Yeah.
I highlighted that on my sheet. Okay, so do you need a motion on this, Mr. Mayor?
I think it'd be good to have some consensus if we have a motion on basically incorporating what we discussed this evening, and then, authorizing the manager to submit those priorities.
Okay, I would make a motion that we challenge the manager to put all this together and submit it.
Challenge accepted.
All right, so there's a motion from Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the second by Mayor Pro Tem, all in favor? All right, all opposed? All right, that is approved unanimously. Thank you all. Good discussion. Appreciate that. And we'll move to the next item on our agenda, and that is to consider adopting ordinance 24-23, which is a temporary road closure on Wednesday, November the 27th, 2024, which is coming up very quickly. And that is related to the Spencer Holiday Caravan Parade. Mr. Harris.
All right, good evening. So, of course, the parade is still moving forward this year, but it is going to be occurring on a different time schedule. It will be a nighttime parade, so the usual daytime closures that we do will be shifted towards the evening. Additionally, I wanted to point out that the closures that are being requested this year are the same closures that are always requested. There was some initial discussion early on in the parade committee about changing how they do the parade lineups, etc. But it was determined, at least for this year, they're going to arrange the marshaling, the lineup, and the feeding of the parade onto the parade route from the exact same streets. So that is specifically the closures being requested are US Highway 29 from 11th Street to Jefferson Street, Jefferson Street from US 29 to North Whitehead Avenue, North Whitehead Avenue from Forestdale to 2nd Street, and Oakwood Drive from North Whitehead Avenue to Pinecroft Lane. And we are projecting, these are sort of preliminary, but I think they are generally accurate, that US 29 is going to be closed from approximately 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. Of course, the parade is happening at 6:30. And then the other smaller streets will be closed from approximately 3:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So in addition to just asking for those temporary closures, I also want to take the opportunity to just update the board and the community who's watching that we are trying to get the message out that people should expect a different schedule this year, that there will be some unusual road closures, especially in the evenings. People are not used to coming back to their homes with the parade still being occurring. So as part of that process and as part of both ensuring public safety and communicating, the Spencer Holiday Caravan has been utilizing their Facebook page to get information out to the public. There are 2 very large banners which have been installed down on Salisbury Avenue, South Salisbury Avenue, and up at Jefferson Street that both advertise for the parade and warn people about potential closures on that date. And then the last thing I want to point out is, of course, the town's public safety officials will have a role to play during the parade, especially the police department. There may be some fire department support as well. They will handle a large portion of the street and road closures, especially along Salisbury Avenue. However, there will be a large contingent of volunteer traffic control personnel who will be securing those routes more around the high school staging area. As of today, they are still looking for volunteers to help with traffic control. And what I would say to y'all, and again to anyone who's watching, that the parade committee will provide high visibility traffic vests as well as those illuminated traffic batons like you see at the airport to those traffic control officers. And we'll be providing them instructions on how to handle the public, especially local traffic who may be needing to get back to their homes. There will be protocols in place to assist those people. And then I think there's also talk about getting walkie-talkies or a group communication strategy for volunteers so that they can communicate to other volunteers who are working on that night. So the long and short of it is, the parade committee is going to be providing support to anyone who does sign up to be a volunteer. And if they need information, they can go to the Facebook page for the parade or email spencerholidaycaravan@gmail.com. So I think that's it for this item. I'll be available to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. One question is related to the closures of US 29 and state maintained roadways. We have to have the county commissioners, we have to have an ordinance by them to approve that as well. Is that correct?
Well, it's not within, that's only if it were going to be outside of town limits, which I don't
Okay.
believe.
Yeah, I don't
Gotcha.
believe it's
Yep.
necessary
Okay.
here. We did do that for the race to the river
Yeah,
because that went through a part of the county control.
got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, board, any other questions for Mr. Harris?
How many volunteers are you looking for?
As of the last parade committee, I think they were at 11 then. I think it's up to around 15 now. We're looking for a total of 30, so we still need about 15 additional traffic control volunteers to get to the point where we feel comfortable. The parade committee are, at this point, prioritizing getting those volunteers because as part of our permit review process, the safety of the parade is the paramount factor there. And so the town staff have been clear that they need to demonstrate that they can safely accommodate traffic before we will approve the permit.
Okay. Any other questions, board? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve ordinance 24-23 for this temporary road closure on November 27th?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Muhammad, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And that's approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Let's go.
The next item is Resolution 24-16, supporting the town's participation in the University of North Carolina's Our State, Our Homes program.
All right, so some background information for y'all. So a couple of weeks ago, I was approached by Hannah Jacobson, who's the planning director in the city of Salisbury. She had heard about this program from the University of North Carolina, but her plate was full, and she said, "Kyle, are you interested in putting together a group to pursue this?" So I said yes. But to give you some information about this program, so UNC has this initiative called Carolina, what was it?
Across 100.
Carolina Across 100, where they want to make an impact in all of North Carolina's 100 counties. So they have a variety of programs and initiatives to try to get outreach to those communities to build up partnerships with communities. One of those strategy areas is called Our State, Our Homes, where UNC wants to use their expertise in housing and policy development, particularly at the UNC School of Government, to provide technical support to communities, specifically to groups in communities who are working in the area of affordable housing. So I provided y'all some information in the staff report as well as in the resolution, and I printed off an FAQ page. But basically what this is local groups will be applying to participate. It is a competitive program, so not everyone will get accepted. But if we put together a competitive application and we get selected, I will be asked to bring together a stakeholder group locally who will commit to talking about affordable housing and learning about affordable housing on a national, state, and local level, about what can be done locally to address housing issues. From all the information I have about it, it's a fairly vague program, but I think it's designed to be that way. Basically what the commitment is, if the town of Spencer is willing to participate with this group that I'm building, is all we have to do is provide either the town manager or his designee a commitment to attend 5 in-person summits at Chapel Hill across 2025 and early 2026. And so think about it as you're just agreeing to participate in a think tank on housing issues. And there's not particularly an end result or an end product, but the idea is we'll be collaborating together to learn about what can be done to improve housing outcomes across the state. So basically what the ordinance or what the resolution says is that the town of Spencer is willing to participate. And basically when I put together the application, I will list the town of Spencer and specifically the town manager as one of our core team members. And that's the only real ask that I'm making here. If we get approved, then I'll have more information to share with y'all in future. But the idea is basically that the town of Spencer, because y'all are already committed to affordable housing, especially through programs like CDBG, even in our land use plan, it talks about quality affordable housing, helping people age in place and things like that. It's just us saying we're all in on this issue and we're willing to work with UNC on it. I will say there is no financial kind of element to this except for, so the town of Spencer will not receive any direct funding, but the project will include funding to help offset costs that may be incurred. So for example, the project will pay for up to $7,000 to reimburse any travel expenses for any of the core partners to go to Chapel Hill and to stay overnight in Chapel Hill. There will be $5,000 for the implementation of a pilot project as well, and a $5,000 stipend for the project manager to support costs related to the project.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Board, are there any questions about the program?
Mr. Harris, I wondered about the community team members and wondered if those would be some of the representatives that are currently serving on the CBG grant program that we have.
So the application has 5 spaces for core team members, and we are already kind of filling those 2 other spots. So 3 of the spots are planned to be local government representatives, and then we have 1 potential from the development community and 1 potential from the banking community. That's sort of what we're looking at. That's what the application asks for, sort of a cross-sector collaborative. I think that would be a great idea if we were able to have more people on the core team. I would say that moving forward, when we pull together our stakeholder group, there's a difference between the core team members and the stakeholder group. Those people could be excellent people to serve on stakeholder kind of things.
Board, other questions? All right, if not, is there a motion to adopt resolution 24-16 in support of our participation in UNC's Our State, Our Homes program?
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
All right.
Let Kyle go ahead and start on this project.
Motion by Mr. Miller, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Muhammad. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? All right. All opposed? That is approved unanimously. Thank you for bringing the opportunity to us.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Kyle.
Kyle.
All right, the next item is to consider adopting a budget ordinance. This is a significant budget ordinance, 24-10.006, to accept $100,000 in grant funding from the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources for the Grants Creek Blueway Trailhead, and then authorizing the manager to execute a grant agreement, provided it has been approved as to form by our town attorney, Mr. Deese. Mr. Morris, welcome in the flesh. It is good to see you back. Glad to have you back home.
And thanks for, and thank you for
The floor is
bringing
yours,
money.
Guilty. I'm glad to be back. So, I thought that it might be helpful if we had a brief revisit of the project. I'm going to show a few slides. I think this board has seen them before, but I just wanted for the, in the interest of providing good information to the public, share those. And so this was the program that was derived and presented to us through the NC Trails program. It was entitled Complete the Trails, and it specifically was designed for communities just like Spencer that are within proximity to state trails. In our case, it's our proximity to the Yadkin River State Trail. The awards were designated to be between $25,000 and $100,000. Populations of communities less than 5,000 did not have a local match required. Submitted the application prior to its due date, May 29th, and we were informed. I just checked my email records. It was November 8th that they sent a letter to us saying that we had received the grant and that there's a 3-year window to complete the proposed project. So this is our vicinity map that we use in communicating these ideas to our funding partners at the state. This particular trail also indicates with the blue arrow a project that I'm currently actually submitted yesterday morning on the proposed Rocky Branch Loop Trail and Trailhead, which is the new trail designation through the most recently acquired 46.25 acres that we have in the Standback Educational Forest. And we show this, there we go. So we can make the connection between this new Rocky Branch Loop Trail and also the Grants Creek Blue Way Trailhead. And so what we are indicating that these properties can be tied together, and we will build with the funds that we have been awarded, $100,000 that we'll get to do this. We'll take advantage of the fact that we cleared all the vegetative debris in Grants Creek using the grant that we had from the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, so that we can put in at the Grants Creek Blue Way Trailhead, which is going to be just off of 7th Street, put in at Grants Creek, travel all the way to the Yadkin River State Trail. It's about 2.5 miles, and then there's another 2 miles where Grant Creek travels down to the Fort York access. So these are the ideas of stringing together all of these funds that were made available to the community without any local match required, except the Rocky Branch project that we applied for does have some local match, but I'll maybe get into that just a little bit later. So this map shows the concept map. The trailhead is indicated in this sort of blue triangle. It may be hard to see on this screen, but essentially the line that is just to the east or to the right of the blue triangle where it says trailhead, that's Whitehead Street. And then there is an unopened right-of-way that extends through the property that is the Standback Educational Forest. We'll take advantage of that access to 7th Street, and the concept is to build the trailhead in the blue triangle and then have a serpentine pathway down to the creek with a kayak and canoe launch. And so this is just an appendix that I submitted as part of the application that shows sort of the surveying of the parcels in that general area. We were very fortunate to receive an engineered drawing of this this parking area as part of a proposal. There was a group that was looking at developing townhomes in that area. What was the name of the development, Steve? Do you remember? Okay. It did not transpire, but it may eventually still being considered by the owners. But the folks that were doing the due diligence on it provided us with this engineered drawing of how the parking lot might look, and so we sort of borrowed it in submitting our proposal to the state. And then I mentioned the natural surface path will be determined in the field and will take us down to, you can do it. There we go. This is a concept drawing for a proposed launch that would be a streamside launch. We borrowed from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, who have done a really good job of creating illustrations like this. And it's an acceptable standard to create a tiered step canoe launch into Grants Creek, and that we would build something sort of akin to this on our property adjacent to Grants Creek, so that people could drive along 7th Street, pull into our gravel parking lot, hoist their kayaks, hike down to the creek. And there's I don't know if any of you may have ever done this, but this is very akin to the Eagle Point Preserve that's off of Black Road, down on the Akin River. It's a county park, and it's a similar kind of thing. We would have an informational kiosk at the trailhead, the parking area, that would show the map, and then you would just saunter down to the water. Right now it's a little dry, but there are times when it's very, 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 very wet. So that's sort of the general idea. We received notification, as I mentioned, on November 8th from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources that we had been awarded the grant. It will be subject to an agreement that will be provided to us to be reviewed by the town attorney. And keeping with the theme of earlier discussion tonight, we will use those monies to build this as opposed to sidewalks or street paving. We'll be required to deliver on that. Heather has provided a budget ordinance that I assume is at your places. It's the budget ordinance number 24-10. 0.006 that essentially puts us funding into the town budget, and it would be a reimbursement-based project where we would actually request bids and build the thing and then ask for reimbursements. We can make periodic requests for reimbursements. It's not that we have to wait until to the very end, but that would be the general nature of it. And so I would, Heather and I talked a little bit before the meeting. She's happy to answer any questions that you might have about the budget amendment. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have about the project in general.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morris.
All right.
Board, are there questions on the project itself or any questions on the budget ordinance that's before you in your agenda packet?
Do you feel like this is enough money to do what you're saying?
So we did some informal tire kicking with some potential contractors, and we had a range of cost estimates, and the short answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
We had one estimate that was a little higher, and these were informal, just conversations with folks, and then one that was much lower. We would put this out to bid and seek competitive bids, and because of the size of the project, we'll be able to do it informally.
Okay.
It's informal bid.
The only thing I'm concerned, it's a great project and I'm all for it, is I'm concerned about the floodplain area. And I don't want to see all this work done and washed away on one big heavy flood or something like that. I am concerned about the soil right there off of 7th Street as far as that goes.
Right.
Because that was the reason we did build the condos, because the soil didn't meet compactly. And I am concerned, even though it's a gravel parking lot, I'm still concerned. I don't want all this money to wash away.
So in the preparation of the grant, I did some research based on the county soil survey, and the soil type in that area is called Chihuahua.
Okay.
And it probably has some meaning that has to do with poor souls or something, but it is not, in the description of Chihuahua, it specifically says that it is not suitable for structure. But it's fine for elevated gravel pads for recreational purposes.
Okay.
And so that was the language that I used when I applied for the grant. And
I'm glad you did your homework as far as
and we were having a conversation about this at the staff level this morning about paved surfaces versus gravel surfaces. And I know that there has, based on hurricane in western North Carolina, there has been a lot of concern expressed about asphalt greenways that have ended up in streams.
Right.
And so now I wouldn't say it's consensus, it's the opinion of a few people I've listened to, and the concern that they're expressing is that if you have a gravel path and it washes out, you can replenish it. If it's an asphalt path and it goes into your stream, is dumping petroleum into your stream. And so this is a conversation that is going on across North Carolina. And so we'll hopefully not experience that level of
hope not either, but at the same time, I don't waste that money as far as I go.
Yeah, I perfectly understand.
And no match means, again, just for the folks playing along at home and for posterity, no match means we spend $0 of our dollars.
Well, except for the vast amounts of money that you're paying me.
Totally. You're worth every penny. You're worth every penny.
Other than that, you're okay.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Staff time is the one thing, which is priceless.
Yeah.
But
Okay, other questions?
Joe, have you already started mowing out there?
I'm sorry?
Have you already started mowing out there? I think I saw an area today off of Old Moxville Road toward Hawkinstown where there had been half mowed.
So that
Streetwide.
that is the sort of annual maintenance that Salisbury Road and Utility Department performs on the sewer line right of way.
No, okay.
So that's what you have observed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Board, is there a motion to adopt budget ordinance 24-10.006, accepting the $100,000 grant from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources for this project, and then also at the same time authorizing the manager to execute the grant agreement once it's been reviewed and approved by Mr. Dees?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a motion from Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Howe. All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Great job as usual.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, the next item is to receive a presentation from none other than Mr. Blunt himself on planning Spencer's future. What's next?
The main event tonight for your entertainment, ladies and gentlemen. I think you jumped right to the end of my program, which is where y'all would probably like to be. Let's take it all the way down.
Middle to place. That's right.
Moving Spencer ahead. Every once in a while, I don't have any zoning permits to approve or subdivisions to look at. And as some other staff will tell you, on those occasions, I put my feet up on my desk and think deep thoughts about Spencer. And this is where this presentation came from. One day I was thinking about what's next. We've got so many good things that we have been working on the last couple of years. Many of those are coming to fruition, and I'll actually lead in with a comment that Joe actually touched on too. I know y'all aren't apologizing for these projects. You're just explaining that you're not spending local tax money on them. But in this presentation, I want you to see that these things you're doing are actually making our community more attractive to people and to businesses. And they're going to bring tax base here that will help pay for the roads and everything else. So I'll lead with that. And if we can get the clicker to work. There we are. I wanted to show you, you hear about the residential growth, but I thought you might enjoy seeing some pictures of what it looks like before and after. So this is the Meadow Street and Hudson Avenue, 6 new homes. The upper left-hand picture is what it was before. Actually had a gully running down through the middle that this contractor had to work hard to satisfy our stormwater concerns. He put a lot of piping in the ground to reroute the stormwater. And then he built 6 nice homes, new sidewalks, street trees, very nice development. This one is on Whitehead Avenue. It wasn't a single development. It was 2 separate ones, one with 2 homes, one with 4 homes. But it was just a patch of woods. Again, another serious drainage problem down through the middle of it. This contractor had to put in a concrete creek, basically, to route the stormwater through this 6-unit development. Clyde Street, 7 new homes. Again, used to be just a raw piece of land running next to the railroad tracks. You wouldn't think that would be an attractive place to build homes. 7 new homes are all occupied, they're all sold. The biggie, if you've been out on Hawkinstown Road anytime recently, this is one we've been talking about for the last couple of years. 141 new homes going in on Hawkinstown Road. They are about finished with the subsurface work and the grading. New construction will probably start first of the year. This one I threw in, it was a weird shaped lot on Pinecroft. We struggled with the contractor to figure out a place to home to deal with some serious drainage problems across that lot. Built a little 1,390 square foot house on that less than a half-acre lot, fixed the drainage problems, put in a nice road. But the number I want you to concentrate on is that one little simple home on that one little lot. It was sold for $250,000. That's the sales price listed in GIS. Add it all up, you've been hearing these numbers before, the number of single-family home permits that I've issued over the last couple of years, including the 8 that I've already issued this year, and the 141 plus that I'll issue next year. There'll be a separate zoning permit for each one of the townhomes because they are individual homes. And that's the kind of numbers you're talking about. Almost $50 million in tax base being added, and that would generate over $300,000 worth of tax revenue. Now, again, a lot of that's in the 141 homes that will be the townhome project. But that's what we're doing, what you're doing, by promoting these kinds of projects. It's not just residential. Again, you've seen these pictures before. This is the industrial and commercial development that we're seeing primarily off of Longs Ferry Road. And you've seen the individual developments, site plans for each one of these 5 sites that I'm showing you here. Again, this is $300 to $400 million in tax base that will be developed in these things. I rode out there today. They're doing geotechnical work on the Willow Creek project, and we met with them last week, I believe it was. They're very ambitious about getting that project moving forward. The truck stop, the grading continues to proceed, and looks like it's going to be finished sometime early in the next year. It hasn't just been economic development projects. You're sitting in a success story right now. This town was courageous to go ahead and do this. And now that town hall, this town hall, is the envy of all small towns in Rowan County and beyond. So y'all took a chance, you did a great thing. It not only is an improvement to the town, but it attracts good staff to work here. People like to be appreciated by having a nice place to work. And when people come to visit us to give us grants, to talk to us about new programs, invariably they're impressed by what they see. And it looks like we're trying to do something good in this town. We've been doing a lot of planning. That's just a few of the plans that we've completed. Y'all been a part of all of these. Y'all been involved in all of these. And the one that I think is most important to the future of the town is the one you recently adopted, the Yadkin River District Plan. The manager and I had an opportunity to meet at Centralina in Charlotte and be a part of a brownstone presentation with the developer that's working on this project. And it looks like the brownfield study will be funded sometime in the not too distant future and move ahead with this plan. That's really the first concrete step in making this whole thing happen, is getting the brownfield study done. You've accomplished other things. I've always thought it a little humorous, but I've learned to see that this is the way Spencer does things. We have a trailhead park. We don't have a trail yet, but we've got a trailhead park. And it's beautiful, and it's maturing as we go. We also have 4 acres of land right above that park that was donated to the town. Donated to the town because the people that held title to it thought the town was starting to do good things, and they wanted to see this park developed along with the trailhead park. Right out front, we had to park somewhere else tonight to get in the front door, but it's something to be proud of that in the very near future, this park will be a reality. And it's something for a town our size to be really, really proud of, something for you to be proud of. You're the ones that made it happen.
Steve, if I could just jump
Yes,
in on
please.
we had a visit today from Trey Fouché, who's our regional recreation specialist, which is that's the group that helps administer the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grants. And he said of the 7 projects that were awarded in the cycle that we were awarded, which I think has been over a year ago now, if my memory, if I'm not making up that, I think it's been over a year. That was a year ago we got it. He said we were the first ones to get under construction of the 7 that he was working through from that cycle. So I just wanted to point that out.
And another project that's almost complete is the restriping of Salisbury Avenue. I think the striping, the repaving is complete. The striping for the cars is finished. I'm waiting to see the bike lanes put in so I can go ride down those bike lanes. Standback Forest. It was an accomplishment in 2012 when the idea came up. It was an accomplishment when the Land Trust and others helped us make it a reality. It was a big accomplishment last year when we doubled the size of the park. You just heard from Joe getting ready to put in the amenities on the north end of that park, and he's also applied for a big grant to do the trail system in the new park. So again, something of that magnitude for a town our size is almost amazing. Add to it the Carter House, and there's work underway with planning and programming for that building to make it the front door to the park and an integral part of our parks and recreation system. So that's why my feet were up on my desk. I was trying to figure out, we've done all these great things, we've accomplished all these things, we got a few things planned in the pipeline, but I don't want the pipeline to go dry. So what I'm asking you tonight is think about what the next steps are. And I wanted to make sure that these were projects that you, as a board, felt were beneficial enough for us to spend staff time and to go out and start looking for grants to make these realities. I picked 3 of them, but at the end of the slideshow, what I'm going to ask you is, what do you think is next? So the 3 that I think are important at this point, first one you've heard of many times before, the Salisbury Avenue Trailhead and Park, which is at this point Kudzu Gully, Goat Gully. That's what it looks like. That's what most people coming from the Salisbury area into Spencer see as they drive into our town. And that's what I think would be better. That's my amateur drawing that shows really more than we need now. We've got the Carter House, so that building on the lower right side of that is not necessary at this time. But I think in the planning process, we would want to reserve that for a future building. Again, this is very conceptual, but it's time for us to start doing the base planning, the concept planning, the master planning, and then start looking for grants to make this into a reality. The drawings that you see at the bottom in the middle came from that 2012 Spencer Woods plan. That's what the planning process at that time thought that lot should look like. I personally have added a greenhouse to the thinking process, not only because I think it would be of benefit to the educational concept that the Standback Forest embraces, but also we can grow our own plants to put in the park and put in other places throughout the town. And I think if that's what the end product looked like, that would be something that people driving into Spencer from the south would be overwhelmed with, and would think of Spencer from the moment that they got here, that this is a beautiful town that I'd like to live in and bring my business to. Can't tell you how to make it look like that. That's what the planning process is all about. And there are differing opinions on what we really should do as far as what it looks like in the end. But again, that's what the planning process would do. The next part's surprisingly even bigger than that. You heard me say from time to time that we need a greenway connection from the Standback Forest over to Salisbury's Greenway off of Old Moxville Road. And that shows you why. It ties the Standback Forest to the Ecological Reserve at Catawba College and to Salisbury's Greenway system. It helps us leverage our greenway system and our park system by claiming all their greenway as being ours too. As I got into this a little deeper, I started looking at that black line, which would be the greenway. The dark blue line is the floodway of Grants Creek. The lighter blue surrounding that is the floodplain. And we wanted to end up with a greenway. So I started thinking about what do you need for a greenway? You got to go across property. So we were going to need easements to run that greenway. And then I got to looking at how wide the floodplain and floodway were of Grants Creek in this area. And I got to thinking about how you build trails. And that cross section at the top is the one that fools most people. You see the creek to the left and you think just a few feet to the right is where the trail's going to be. But you don't build trails next to the creek. You try not to build trails in the floodway because, as Mr. Miller pointed out, you don't want them to wash out every time it floods. You can build them up in the flood plain or even on the shelf up above that. So the more I looked, the more I thought, where should the greenway be placed? That drawing on the upper right is from my back door on Pickett Avenue to the other side of the floodplain of Grants Creek. And by my measurement was 1,300 feet from one side to the other. Surprisingly, at the deepest point, which would be at the base of the creek itself, to when it floods, is only 10 feet deep. So when we have storm events and I look out my back door, it looks like Grants Creek has become a lake. But because it is so shallow, in a day or two, it's all gone. It all drains back off. And that's how you save your trails, Mr. Miller, is you worry about the drainage. And as a plumber, you know that. You can't beat water, but you can certainly determine where it flows. And that's what the drainage side of it is. So the more I started looking at it, the more I thought, well, instead of trying to buy a 20-foot easement through the middle of some properties, this property was actually split up into a lot of little parcels, 39 by my count, most of them very small, most of them unbuildable because they are in the floodway. The ones that are in the floodplain don't have any road access. So all in all, they're not worth financially a whole lot of money. So I got to thinking, instead of just buying an easement, why don't we just buy the whole property? How much would that cost us? And as I sketched it out, I came up with that blob of green that says 150 acres. Well, that sounds crazy for just a greenway. And that's when, having my feet up on my desk, good thoughts were flowing uphill that day. And I thought, well, instead of just a greenway, how about making it a park? And how about making it a part of Catawba College's ecological preserve? 150 acres. Their current ecological preserve is about 200 acres. Our standback forest is about 100 acres. So between the two, we'd be adding 150 acres to both of those projects. I'm going to skip over that one. We're going to come back to that greenway in just a minute. The third item on my ticket is residential growth. And you've already seen from the first slides what good that does for our community. Not just giving people a place to live, but growing our tax base and growing our population. But if you really start looking for parcels of land that are large enough to do fairly large developments on, there's not many left. So I went through and marked these parcels to show you where the biggest pieces of undeveloped land exist right now. And I want to point out to you that a lot of them are on the northwest side of Grants Creek in our ETJ. To do developments in our ETJ, we're basically going to have to push for high density residential. It's the only way we have any control over annexation is when these projects need water and sewer extended to them, just like Hawkins Meadows. So I wanted to put this in front of you so you would be keeping in mind as the town of Spencer grows that a fairly large portion of that growth needs to be high density residential of this type. The picture of the Yadkin River District, it showed you a mix of residential types. What we learned at the Brownfield Summit was that if it is in a brownfield agreement, you can't put single family homes on it. It's one of their rules. You can put townhomes, you can put condominiums, you can put apartments, but you can't put single family homes. I'd argue that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but who am I to argue with the government? So the Yadkin River District plan would probably include a large percentage of this. And you as public leaders will hear from some people that that's bad. That it's not what Spencer wants to be. But you guys keep in mind that this is what we need. I added just a quick list of some other things I brought to you before. I won't go through them individually. Y'all have a planning retreat every year in February, I think, is usually when you do it. So between now and February, what we need to be thinking about is what's next for Spencer. What's next? What are we going to concentrate on? What are we going to ask Joe to go find money for? Let me go back to these two. I have talked to one of our planning organizations, consultants, asked them what a master plan, concept level master plan would cost. They suggested about $10,000. So I'm actively looking for $10,000. And at some point in the future, when I find that money, I'm going to come back and ask you if we can get started with that planning process. I wanted you to be aware that we are actively looking for that now. No longer just my drawing. You're going to see some professional drawings. This one, I'm not going to think about even spending money yet, but we have already started the partnership building. We have met at the staff level with Catawba College's staff. They are excited about the prospect of expanding their ecological preserve. They're excited about the prospect of being partners with Spencer to make this happen. We have had some staff level meetings with the city of Salisbury. Staff are excited about this project, and I've asked them to start educating their board to this project so that if this picture shows up on the front page of Salisbury Post, nobody's going to be surprised about it. And then also very quickly, I want to contact all the property owners and start the dialogue with each one of them We already know that there are a number of these property owners that are interested in donating their properties. And therefore, the acquisition of properties would be a lot less than you might think it would be. And as was stated, there's still lots of grants out there for trails and greenways. So this project, probably funding is not going to be the hang-up. It's going to be community relations. I got 39 property owners I got to talk to and make sure they're happy with this. With that, luckily I'm finished, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
A lot to ponder. Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Board, any questions or just initial thoughts and reactions to the presentation?
I think it's a wonderful presentation. 10 years ago, I would have never believed we'd be sitting here talking about this. And I just think it's mind-boggling to think about it. It makes me excited.
Mr.
The
Blunt.
Salisbury mayor and I have talked over the last couple of years about some way to partner with our trails. And so, yeah, we've been talking about it now, I don't know, 3 years or so.
It's time to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Mr. Miller.
On this conceptual drawing on the Environmental Arts Center, do we own that? I mean, I know there's a board right there, visual board. I was thinking that was owned by somebody else. That wasn't owned
The
by.
corner where the, if I can get back to that picture. Mike doesn't like me doing it. There
Right
it is.
there.
Yeah, the corner of that property we don't own. It's owned by a sign company up in, I want to say Lenore, but that's
Do we
not.
actually own that gorge?
We own the gorge.
Do we really? Okay. I
Yeah,
wasn't sure.
because that gorge actually goes back into Standback
I
Forest.
knew it did, but I
Yeah.
didn't know
Yeah,
if
there's-
anybody owned it.
We actually own 3 individual parcels that makes up that whole rectangle except for the lower right-hand corner.
All right, let me ask you another question on that drawing. That street that goes back to the proposed greenhouse,
Mhm.
is that actually a city street or town street? Or is that
It's,
just,
it's an interesting situation in that when the nursing home built their facility,
yeah,
that is still shown as a public right-of-way.
okay,
It is used as a driveway
Yeah.
for not only them, but there's a house, a
house,
small house right
corner
there.
right there.
They use it to get around to the back of their property.
Okay,
But I think there would be no problem in us using it to access
Okay.
the greenhouse.
That's fine.
Although most of the accessing would be done by foot. It would be a part of the trail system,
right, I understand.
at least in my mind. That's the things that the planning process will work out.
Yeah.
But good questions. We'll put you on the planning committee.
Thanks. So I think,
There would be a parking area somewhere there.
The black is what I would think of as being parking areas, one next to the existing road to the right, and then one to somewhere around where the greenhouse area would be. I show a greenhouse. The original plans actually showed a little amphitheater type thing there for outdoor teaching processes.
But we've got that now at the Carter House, and that
Yeah.
would be,
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
the terrain there that could easily get. the
Quite
Carter
honestly,
House.
what I would foresee happening is this being done in stages.
yeah,
The first stage being getting rid of the kudzu, doing the basic grading, planting grass and some planting areas, and building the trails. That's the biggest part, is getting the trails so you can connect to Standback Forest trails, and building a parking lot so people can park there and get onto the trails and go in. Then the rest of it can be built in later stages.
The terracing with the, is really beautiful, and I'd like to see
Well,
that happen.
I'm glad you agree with me on that. There is debate over whether that's what this should be, and I'm not the one to make that decision. We'll need to go through the planning process and get public input and get your input. That is what I wish my backyard looked like.
Yeah, mine too. Could we do hydroponic in that greenhouse too? Is that a
Good
thought?
question.
There's a possibility of doing hydroponic in there, but also there's water running through the bottom of this gully almost continuously. So there could be water features, ponds and things down in the water feature.
So to give the board an idea, because I know as this idea has been floated out there. Some people have asked, well, what an environmental arts center, what does that look like?
To some degree, it looks like the Carter House. Not physically looks like, but the use of it would be the Carter House. And that's why I said you probably don't need that building right now, because you do have the Carter House. If you didn't have the Carter House, I would be saying this would be public education facility. It would be where your Parks and Rec director would be located. It's where there would be public meetings on outdoor things. It would be educational space for Standback Forest. When the schools bring their buses and their kids come out, this is where the bathroom facilities would have been, where they could meet and discuss. And they could go to the greenhouse and learn how to plant a tomato seed and grow a tomato plant. So the programming side of it needs to be developed through the planning process. There is another part of it, what's it look like? Good choice of words, because I think that's almost as important as what it's used for, is what image it gives the town of Spencer and what image it gives the Standback Forest. Again, a lot of people drive up and down Salisbury Avenue. I think it's 7,000 people a day up and down that road. And right now they don't know that there is a Standback Forest.
I have no idea.
But this could be the big sign on the side of the road that says it is. This could be, we don't want thousands of people walking through there a day, but we do want more people to use the Standback Forest. It's a great asset for this community.
Board, other questions or thoughts? I think, these are great and lofty things, and the things we've been talking about for several years now. And it's nice to kind of see the progress and the things that have been accomplished, the things that are in the works, that are going to be accomplished over the next several years, and then the things that we have to work towards. I think, the message that we have heard loud and clear recently from our current citizens is this is all great, and they're appreciative that we're doing this type of forward thinking, but also making sure that we are keeping our current citizens' needs in mind and that we're balancing those with these future plans. And I think we are. I think we just need to continue to reiterate that and keep that in the back of our mind as we go through these planning processes and strategic planning, that we're, not only are we looking toward the future, but we're also looking toward the present and making sure that we're taking care of citizen needs right now. And that's the challenge of government, is that there are different funding streams and things like that for these type of projects. And right now, these type of park and greenway projects, that's what's getting the attention of the state and the funding sources. And if we're not going after these, then somebody else is, and those other places are going to be who improves the quality of life for their residents and brings in new residents. So it's a part of the grander plan, and I think that's what we need to make sure that we continue to reiterate is this is just one strategy and one part of the grand plan. The parks are one part of it. The new development is another part of increasing tax base. Also that we can work to improve our current citizens' quality of life, giving them new opportunities and things to do, but also trying to find ways to increase tax base that's not on their backs, so that ultimately, what we as a board, and I think staff always want to try and do, is reduce the tax rate when we can. And then we knew we couldn't this past year, but this is the way we're able to do that, through these type of things that can be funded through outside sources and new development that's going to bring in additional tax revenue. That's the only way that as a town we can drive tax rates down. All right, Mr. Blunt, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work.
Feet on the floor and get back to work.
I'll remain standing. I think I'm up.
Thank you very much. All right, next item. We will move now to our departmental reports, and we'll start with the planning department.
Before I give you my brief report, as usual, I have laid at your desk an application from Jim Pendergrass, or Bob Pendergrass, to serve as the ETJ member on the planning board. We have an ETJ space open, we have an in-town space open. I thought I had people lined up for both of them, so I'd asked Bob to apply to the county for the ETJ seat, which is allowed by your previous vote. And he did so, and wanted to put that before you. I'll come back to you at a later meeting and ask for you to approve it, but I just wanted you to know that he had applied.
I think that's fantastic.
He is a good man and will be a great asset.
Glad to get him involved.
And as far as my department report, you have my written report in front of you. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Board, any questions for Mr. Blunt?
How many chicken permits have we issued so far?
We've had 7 applications. We have issued 4 permits. And they have been of differing, of the 4, I think 3 of them has actually gotten their chickens in, and a variety of different types of approaches to coops and screening and things of that nature. So citizens are being creative within the program. And I think if at the end of the year it's a success and you vote to approve it, we will have some modifications on certain parts of the program to make it a little more workable. But it seems to be going well.
Yeah.
And that's the intent of the pilot, right? To
Absolutely.
figure those things out. So,
Absolutely.
very good. Okay, any other questions? All right, Mr. Harris, anything on your end? All right, thank you. Code enforcement, Chief File.
Evening.
Good evening, sir.
I'll try to keep my report brief. I know everybody always laughs when I say that. I provided the standard monthly report for code enforcement. Kind of looking at just overall, we've got 466 cases year to date, which is very good, remembering that we had the code enforcement position was open. He just hit his 6 months with us. So he has built a lot of cases. And looking at this month, we've got about a 75% voluntary compliance, which is kind of a target number. We like to see that. Anything over 50% is good. So he's, for this month, he was able to get 75% voluntary compliance. Only had to send out 1 NOV, and he's got 9 that are left open that he's working with the individuals at their residences to resolve the issues. So I'm very happy with the way code enforcement is going, and I will try to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Board, any questions for Chief File?
Did you cite anybody for too many signs in their yard?
No, actually not. and no chicken complaints either. So
Any special, now he's been on, been here for a few months, anything we need to revise, consider, change?
I mean, he's still learning on the go, really. To be honest with you, I mean, it's going to take a little while. He's not really, and neither have I, done any really in-depth cases, so we have to kind of lean on Steve for that. As I mentioned last month, as all of our high grass issues are winding down, he's kind of focused on a few target residents that we got, and realistically, we'll probably be bringing some information to the board after the first of the year on a few of those that we're going to have to take a couple steps further. So kind of those repeat offenders are the ones that we're just not getting any compliance out of. So, but he's, we're very fortunate. We've got a good code officer that's very good at talking to people. So numbers prove it. He's getting a lot of voluntary compliance simply by just staying in constant contact with them and making it work.
So I know one of the concerns that was brought up with the group of residents we met with related kind of to the question of code enforcement relative to animal control and responsibility between code enforcement, police, Rowan County Animal Control. And just want to bring that up because I think it's something we need to collectively sit down and try and make sure that we're all on the same page with how that's being managed and also how we're communicating that to residents. But that was one of the issue board, but one of the issues that came up, specifically one case that you're familiar with that you and your team have spent an inordinate amount of time and visits working through. So that was one of the concerns. The other, from an animal control perspective, was the large population of feral cats within town.
Yeah.
And so I think those are just a couple items where collaboratively with the residents as well as code enforcement, police, and just the town staff in general, we need to sit down and put our heads together. Yeah, they recognize that it's an issue and figure out some solutions to it. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think it's going to be several different strategies that have to happen.
Definitely. Yeah, fortunately for us, realistically, we have very little to do with animal control now. But we do have a few things, obviously, like the case that you're mentioning, where the police department takes the lead on it, and it's a habitual case. Barking and keeping of animals, the town kind of has control over, and that would be done on the police department side. There's a few other instances that we really don't see a lot anymore. We used to have a lot of issues with tethering, where people would tie their dogs up in the front yard or tie them up and leave them out. We used to have to go back and actually watch that because the threshold is 2 hours or more per day. So it was very resource intensive because we'd actually have to go watch the residents, see if they took the dog in. If they did, the clock stopped. So then if you really wanted to enforce it, you had to just keep sitting there and see if they brought the animal back out. So there are some kinks in the system. And, we do have open dialogue with Rowan County Animal Control. So I actually went back and I spoke with Peter a little bit earlier today, and I went back and looked at the actual number we had. So we're not receiving a lot. So for the whole calendar year, January 1st to current, we only had 17 reported cases that were called in for animal related. And I believe about half a dozen of them were the one case that we were speaking about that we're actually working through with the court system on right now. So it's not a large number. So realistically, we've got a small number of them, or they're just going undocumented. Now, obviously, if somebody calls into our dispatch and and it's directly an animal control call, it may not be dispatched to our officers. It may go straight to animal control. Quite often, we may be dispatched on it if it's like an immediate need or if it's after hours and they page the animal control officer, and then we'll kind of tell them what we've got on the scene, and they'll determine whether they send somebody out. So, and I believe out of the ones that animal control was dispatched on, it was about half a dozen. We went out to the scene and requested them. So, and they obliged us on that. So, it's one of those things where we want the citizens to know there's an issue, make the complaint. Dispatch is going to direct who they send out to us. So after hours, they'll likely get us, and then we'll kind of feed that up the food chain to whoever it needs to go to.
I think the big thing and that we heard was making sure that the messaging and feedback to the residents, that first of all, that feedback loop is closed so that they know that there's some resolution or not. And then also the other piece of that then is making sure that the message that's being communicated by us as a town and town staff and the message that's being communicated from animal control back to our residents is cohesive, because I think what we're hearing is sometimes it's not, and sometimes maybe animal control is saying, oh, well, we don't do that, when in reality maybe they do. And I think that's the type of stuff we've got to work through.
Yeah, and I think it'll be pretty easy. Like I say, it's not a very high number of cases, so hopefully that'll be a fairly easy issue to resolve. Thank you.
And if I could just jump in just on the one case with involving an inordinate number of dogs, and Chief Isle and I were discussing some today. It does sound like in that case, the animal control's response, even if it was 100 dogs, as long as there's not a dog that's not being malnourished or abused, that may be the response. In other words,
yeah, I mean, realistically, as a rule of thumb, and I don't want to speak for animal control because I know they have their own policies and procedures, and that's something they could clarify for us. But quite often they look for, is there a threat? That would be one thing they would look at, and then they're going to verify like rabies vaccination records and whatnot. But then if the animal is being cared for, it's got food, it's got water, it's not malnourished, unless there's another reason for them to be involved, it comes back on the town ordinances as far as handling the other items. So, like the one case we've got where it's a really high number of animals, they're violating the ordinance. They're cared for, they're fed, got water, it's a nice house. there's not a whole lot that animal control will step in on. And I will say on that one, we requested them to check the vaccine records, and they did it. So I mean, they did their part of that one case. But as far as coming in and doing something more significant, that kind of comes back to us on the ordinance side. So we're very hopeful that the courts are going to be a help with that. I believe it's the first time, at least according to the master's office. We've got one here, but probably the first time somebody has been taken uptown for substantial animal violations of an ordinance nature like that. So, unfortunately, we had to go that avenue, but when it affects multiple property owners, and that's that direction we had to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, we've been talking tonight, the theme is quality of life, right? And doing things that improve quality of life. And I think, when you got a group of folks whose quality of life is being impacted because of one bad actor, obviously it's something we need to put effort into to resolve.
And the wheels of justice move slow. So I actually spoke to one of them today and had a conversation via email, and he goes back to court in December, but there's no guarantee that an attorney doesn't request a continuance. So, unfortunately, it's not, if you receive multiple calls about it, it's not a guarantee that it'll be heard in December, but that's when it's scheduled for the first week. So hopefully we'll have some positive information by the December board meetings.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Our ordinance says you can have 3. Is that correct? 3 dogs?
Yeah, and it's a little vague on the way it's written. I mean, that is more about how many that you have outside at any given time.
Oh,
So
okay.
we can't really enforce. If somebody has 6 dogs and they're not putting all 6 outside at the same time, I mean, you can cycle animals, if you want to call it that. You could have 3 in your house and swap them out, put them back in an approved fence. You can move them around. The kind of the point or the gist of the ordinance is you can't dump a 12 pack of dogs in the backyard and leave them out there and cause disruption for the whole neighborhood. So,
Right.
And it's a couple different, our ordinances. Some of them were written way back, but they're still functional the way they're written. They're still valid. I don't know what the thought process was on the way some of them are wrote, but they're functional. So I mean, you can't have animals that are causing a habitual nuisance by barking, and then you can't have too many of them. So we use both of those in this case.
Well, I think that then, leads to a broader question. Do we need to take a look at our ordinances related to animal control to make sure that they're meeting our citizens' needs, that they're updated, and then try and identify where there's ambiguous language that makes it difficult for y'all to police and to monitor? I mean, I think now's maybe a good time for us to begin looking at that.
Well, if you have an animal that's bred, you have 2 animals, and suddenly then you have 12.
Right. And it's not so much that there's bad language per se, and it does require a little extra on the police department side because there's mandatory notification where you have to notify. So the unfortunate part is a lot of citizens don't understand that. And even when you explain it to them, they kind of don't like it. But for it to be, legally standing, we have to follow exactly how it says. So if it says we have to go over there and give them a verbal warning, the citizen thinks we're going to go over there and make an arrest on it. Well, we can't. And then we have to give them 24-hour notice to correct the problem. Then we have to go back again. So it requires a lot of documentation, and it may require multiple trips to one address before we're actually able to even go to the most basic of fines. It's not necessarily something that you can just walk up and resolve on the first night. So, it would definitely be something we could look at. There's a way to strengthen it in the future. So,
do we contract for services with animal control for the town, or do they just assume? How does that work? I probably should know that.
Yeah, they just provide coverage. And I'm not sure when that occurred. I know there's some language in the ordinance going back to I think the early 2000s when it said they basically the adoption of the ordinances and animal control would handle it. I'm not really sure if there's more information on that or not.
The town wanted Rowan County Animal Control to operate within our municipal limits. The county asked that we adopt their ordinance, their animal control ordinance. So that is a part of our ordinances. So they have legal authority to come in and enforce in our municipal limits.
Okay.
And they can do it in any other municipality that's adopted their ordinance. Some municipalities have an animal control officer separate, and they do their own enforcement. Don't think we want to do that.
So I guess my question is to his point, to either of you, your point about there's some things in the town ordinance that animal control doesn't do. Did I understand that they're more law enforcement side or code enforcement? What's the interplay there? How does that
The
work?
county is more concerned with the treatment of the animal rather than being a nuisance to your community. Our ordinance is more focused on being a nuisance to the community, and therefore it controls the number of animals you can have outside, and it controls barking. And as the police chief said, there's a lot of steps to it, but that's the due process that is required by state statute. So we can't speed up the process and go out there and arrest them on the first night. You eventually get to that point, and you would think most people would take care of their dogs a little better once they've been arrested and hauled off to the magistrate's office. But unfortunately, the court system's clogged. It will go before a district court judge after it's been postponed a few times. I wouldn't expect that they're going to lock her up for 20 years on that first case. The
reality is,
this one has been a
animals
repeat
do
case.
crazy things, right?
Yeah.
Animals get out of fences. Animals do,
Yeah. Someone
you know,
climbed it.
and right.
Maybe we need a dog tax added back.
And so for somebody that happens one time, or even the second time, I mean, I think that's, that's a steep. Having been there,
Yeah, all of us have.
experienced it firsthand. Neighbors aren't always the nicest when it comes to your animals.
Yeah.
We have a
this
way
is
to
a
deal.
situation of a nuisance that's habitual, and I think that's what the intent of these ordinances are, is that you're not degrading the quality of life for citizens around.
The current ordinance has the ability to deal with the nuisances, and we're going to see if the court system will support that effort. If they don't, there's another option beyond that we will bring back to you if this process doesn't work. But we know what the next step is. It's not that we need to tweak our ordinance.
That's just my big concern, is making sure that we've got clear delineation of duties, clear understanding between the two departments, clear communication feedback loop to the residents when a complaint's been made, and that our ordinances are sufficient and that they're not antiquated, or that they're not nebulous and confusing, such that we're not able to clearly enforce them.
Well, and so I guess the reason, and yeah, I mean, the reason I ask that is number one, maybe we do need to look at that language if it's decades old or whatever. But I guess you mentioned something that I think there's some concern that there's animal related things animal control don't do because it's not part of the county ordinance. That makes a lot of sense. So if we're analyzing our ordinance, we're looking at our ordinance. Maybe the question becomes if there's an enforcement piece, like the number of animals or whatever, that's beyond what the county does. If we're updating our ordinance, do we ask them to make that part of what they do, at least here? And I say that because if we're getting a situation where it's animal related or any topic, and we have someone who does it, but the answer is, well, we don't really do that. We send it over to somebody else, and they say, well, I'm not sure we do that, and they say, then we get that bureaucratic, cycle that, I think right now we're
Anybody we've heard
from,
we've asked not to call 911, but to call either the police department directly, and we give them the number, or to contact us through either the town's email or the iWorks system to let us know there's a problem. If they do that, then we have a contact number to get back in touch with them to let them know what we're doing, what's happened. As the chief said, if they call 911, it's very likely that 911 is going to report it to animal control, and we're never going to know about it. So we've got no way to inform the citizens of what animal control has done. Animal control may go by there and see that the animals are being well kept and no health problems, they're not being abused, and they check it off their list and go to the next one. Rowan County Animal Control, I think, has 3, or it's not more than 3, and they're doing the whole county.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like when those are dispatched, if they're dispatched through 911, they need to be dispatched to the police, who then makes the determination whether animal control gets
I'll say it's definitely a little unique on the way it goes. So I'll tell you, based on our dispatch system, like when we are sent out, I actually just looked this up earlier, so bear with me, I'm gonna glance at my notes. I believe we had So we had 6 instances this year, so 6 out of the 17 were where we were dispatching. It was actually an animal control need, not something that could be handled underneath the ordinance. So like on those cases, just so everybody understands how it works, like the dispatcher will then send out animal control or page them out if it's after hours. The follow-up we get, unless we just happen to be on scene and animal control arrives while we're sitting there, they work off a totally independent system, so we don't get notes put back in there. So we really don't know what the resolution is. We leave it with the citizen that animal control has been notified, and they'll be the ones that are responding. And it may be something where we can get a little collaborative effort, at least for maybe some brochures or what we could handle. I don't necessarily, there's not going to be a way to merge their system into ours to where we can share notes. I mean, that's going to be beyond, I think, the abilities. And obviously, like Steve mentioned, there's very few of them, so I wouldn't anticipate they would call us every time and tell us what they did. But if there's at least some literature, maybe we can get some literature made up that we can definitely hand out when people call in. Like I said, we're a very limited number of calls anyway, but that kind of spells out what we do and what the police department handles. Code enforcement's involvement in it is very, very little. That's more like if you don't have an acceptable fence to house the animal. And that's something I've never seen in my time here, where code enforcement's had to work on that aspect of it. It always comes to the police department. So really, it's more or less the PD and animal control answering those calls. So, and we've got a decent relationship with them. I've talked with them 3 times this week on the telephone. So I mean, we've got a fine relationship with them. There again, it's just one of those things where it's 2 different independent systems. So as far as dispatch calls animal control, they provide the caller's information to them, not to us. But we don't necessarily always even have the caller's number to call back. It just depends on how it was, how the call came in. So there again, if it comes in through the portal, we would have the information to where we would be able to call the complainant, and then we would forward that to animal control. At that point, though, we would tell them, as far as our portal complaint, we would put in there it was referred to animal control for follow-up. So there again, we may not know what they do to actually resolve the issue. So definitely something we can talk with them about if there's a better way to get feedback on that.
Yeah, I would say, to me, I think that's probably the biggest issue right now is just being able to close that loop with y'all internally, I think, and then also with the residents. So, okay. Other feedback, other comments on code enforcement? All right, we'll move to the police department report.
And I provided the customary monthly report for the police department and your ACE team. A busy month. Numbers are looking down a little bit. Not really false hope that crime has went away, though. There were 2,344 events logged this month. This is kind of our little swoop in call volume right now before the holidays pick up. So we concentrated. September and October was a very heavy month on training, catching everybody up for their yearly mandated training and a few elective opportunities they had. So we ran a lot of officers at training this month. So a few less than normal, but call volume remained steady and what we would anticipate for this time of year. And obviously, the Polar Express and our winter events are in full swing. So there will be a lot of officer hours logged between now and the end of the year. But I will try to answer any questions you may have about this month's report.
All right, thank you, Chief. Board, any questions on the police department report? Okay.
And Mayor, if I could interject one more thing, kind of keeping on the theme of some of the concerns we heard. And Chief File and I talked today, and one of the things he shared, and I had said it last week, but I did not know the number, but our patrol officers, each of them are checking each park at least 3 times a day. And so that rounds out to basically 12 park checks in each park every day, on a typical day. So,
yeah, as a rule of thumb, they'll do park checks like that. So obviously when we're running shorter staffed, it may be slightly less. But yeah, speaking of Library Park, they can anticipate that there's typically between 10 and 12 park checks done daily. Now, a lot of those may be in the middle of the night, too, when they ride through and shine their spotlight and ensure that nobody's over there. So we actually pulled some numbers on that, coincidentally. We're only 2 calls since the beginning of the year at Library Park. So I mean, it is a safe area. We had an issue with a few vagrants that we had to run off, and I think we talked about that about 2 or 3 board meetings ago. But as a rule of thumb, we don't really have a lot of issues over there. So now going back some years, we used to. So we're very thankful for the way it's been. But again, if anybody's watching right now on the live stream, if you see anything that's suspicious, we want you to call it in. We definitely want to be able to check it. So. But there are park checks done, so I mean you can rest assured they're about hourly that a car will be going by our park. So,
What about, one of the other things I think that came up was the discussion about potentially enhanced camera monitoring within our parks. And I know, we've talked with the city of Salisbury about tying into their monitoring system and things like that. Any thoughts or input on what that might look like going forward to get modernized cameras in each of our parks?
We've actually discussed that, so I think we've got a pretty good idea. Taking care of a few of them now, to where we're going to have cameras that will be able to notify the officers of movement after hours. So that's going to be kind of beneficial for your night shift officers that are out here working at nighttime. Not so much during the daytime because there's so much movement at the parks, but at nighttime when the park is closed, if it senses movement, it's going to notify the officer. It may be an animal, but it's worth them riding out and checking it. So I believe that's going to be good. We actually spoke briefly about the river park. That was going to be a little bit harder to figure out because we don't have internet service down there. So once we figure out the internet service at the river park, that's going to be the first place I want cameras because further out you are, the higher probability of having issues. So we definitely want those resolved, but we've got some cameras that have already been purchased. I don't have them installed yet, so we're starting to update these old cameras that we've got. So if for those that have been around, the camera system over at Library Park, I believe, was installed somewhere around 2016, maybe was when, or 2015 was when those cameras were originally purchased. So they're far past their useful life, and after a couple storms. We have about lost the ability to have good footage there. So that's going to be a slow process, but we do have a plan in place for that. We've got a little bit of money budgeted this year for additional purchase of the cameras, and then again we'll budget more for July and just continue expanding the program on that. So.
Does Davidson County, do they have camera service over there on the opposite side of the road?
They did. Honestly, I don't know if it's still active anymore. That would be a question I'd have to follow up with them on. I know they did originally. I don't know whenever they kind of redid their park what they did with their original camera system and if it's been expanded or if they've added cameras to their new playground area. I feel for certain they have, but I don't want to speak for them.
They have had some folks that have liked to shoot out the cameras. And even climb the pole to take the cameras down.
Oh, wow.
I have seen people though using laptops there in that park, so they may have some form of.
Yeah, I think the Davidson County side may have some. We actually field tested the ability to maybe put a hotspot, a MiFi hotspot down there, but in the swag of the hill, the service is so weak it doesn't provide a good enough service to be able to stream video. So we're going to have to kind of back up and punt on that and hope maybe we can get some cable internet down there.
That's why you need the river district, because then high-speed internet will be down there.
Right, definitely. That's what we need. As soon as we have it, rest assured they will be installed very quickly. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else on the police department report, board?
Had a citizen who was at the North Salisbury game commended you and your team on a well-executed safe event. So
definitely, we appreciate it. It was all hands on deck. So I believe we had 21 people working that game.
Oh,
so yeah, there were people that you never knew were watching that game. They were watching it. So we had a few issues and had to escort a few out. I think we made one arrest at it. So you can always anticipate that when you got a hometown game there, going at each other. So, but everything worked out good. So no injuries or nothing exceptional to report on that. So. All right.
Thank you, sir. All right. We have the fire department report. We have Deputy Chief here this evening.
Mayor and board, good
Good
evening.
evening.
Hope y'all are doing well. I'm sure you have a copy of Chief Lanning's report in front of you. One correction that I have is under personnel. We did identify an engineer candidate And are we beyond the conditional offer portion yet? Okay, so then he should start the 25th of this month. Great.
I think we're going through the background process still. So we're in that. We made the offer. We're going through the background.
And will that have us fully staffed then?
Yes.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Well done. Yes.
Very good.
If you have any other questions, I will do my best to answer.
Okay. Board, any questions?
How's the new fire truck doing?
Doing well. Currently trying to figure out how we want to mount equipment, where we want to mount equipment, and do it right the first time, so we don't have to try again. So we should have it in service late December, early January.
One thing I'll note about that, the truck is that we experienced some cost savings in the closing costs and some of the fees that were programmed into the cost of the truck and the loan and working through the USDA. So we had some additional funds available that we were able to put towards additional equipment and additional specialized storage for the fire truck. So that is helping get that truck put into service in a good way.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next is our Public Works report. Mr. Taylor.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Covered a lot of stuff earlier, so just a few notes. We are in the thick of the leaves, so yeah, be patient with us just a little bit. We're running 2 backs as hard as we can and with a 4-day week, so we will get there. Just be patient a little bit. I am going to remind everybody this month, and I'm going to do it again next month. Christmas is a little strange for us this year. The offices are closed Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Our offices are going to be closed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There's no way we can pick up trash on Monday and Friday on a 2-day week. That's just not going to happen. So my guys, we elected at the beginning of the year. The schedule is here. I think Mike puts it up on the line too. We will be working Monday and Tuesday, which will be Christmas Eve, and we'll take our 3 days afterwards. So that way everybody gets picked up before the holiday. And that's basically all we can do. And then the next week you'll be basically right on schedule except for the day for New Year's. So I'll announce that again next month, but I want people to kind of understand that Tuesday and Wednesday are going to have to be put out on the same day to get your trash picked up. We'll just have to run both trucks.
And as a reminder this week, tomorrow's route runs on Thursday.
There you go.
Today's route runs tomorrow.
That's right. That is correct. So, nothing but good words for Kyle about setting up the trunk or treat that was held. It was absolutely fantastic, and scrunch face and everything that you dealt with. I think we had a lot more people this year than we even had last year, so it keeps getting bigger. We're going to have to keep giving more candy away. And the last thing that I'll mention is Christmas decorations. The main street lights are up and will be burning because the polar started, of course, last weekend or this past weekend. With the signs across Salisbury Avenue will not go up to the week right before the parade. Those will be up and then they'll be lit actually the day of the parade is when they'll come on. So, and then of course the Christmas tree will go up the Monday after Thanksgiving. Is when it'll go up and then we'll be lit that Friday. But other than that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
All right, thank you. Board, any questions for Mr. Taylor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is our finance report. Mrs. Can.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So you have my report in front of you. There's a couple of notes I made at the bottom of a couple pages, just about some of our revenues. The Rowan County taxes. Just wanted to report that we're 3 months into that. and our sales and use tax, we're at 0.42% over where we were this time last year. And the overtime on the fire department is basically for the new hire EMT class that we covered, mentioned that, and then the Western North Carolina assistance there, which we will hopefully get that back through FEMA. And I think that's all of my notes really to go over. Do you have any questions about anything on there?
Board, any questions? I guess the one question I have, sales and use tax, what did we budget as the expected increase in sales and use tax?
2 or 2.5. I don't remember the
I think it was about 2.
I think it was
is what
2.
we were.
Okay.
And this, we think it will
Increase.
as is. This first one is typically like kind of like this, and and the next one ought to catch us up a little bit, so we don't feel like we're off track at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't come in evenly.
With the holidays coming and that kind of stuff and going through that. So, an update on the audit is we have received all the documentation to review and submitted that back to the auditor. They are in the process of submitting that to LGC. I haven't got the email that it's been submitted or approved yet, but I'll look for that in the next couple of days. We did have a significant deficiency on there. And the way it's stated is that the significant deficiency identified, and it is not considered to be a material weakness. And what that was we have two project budgets, and I neglected to make some entries at the end of the year, and that was what caused it, because there were significant entries that should have been made. For example, we paid, an invoice was sent to us the 1st of July, and it should have been coded as 6/30 because the services were performed in the prior year, and I didn't catch that, and there were 2 of those. So that's the significant deficiency.
What is the impact of having that on that audit relative to any future financing or anything like that?
Because it's not a material, it's immaterial, I would say that it wouldn't be impact.
We don't expect an impact. It's certainly a lesson learned, and what I'll also note is the one we got for year after year on a broken record about separation of duties was no longer in there.
That's good.
Correct.
Which we were glad to see.
Right. And as soon as I get an email when that is submitted and approved, I'll just forward that to you guys and let you know that it's done.
We probably will have that presented, I assume, at the December meeting is what we're figuring though.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is our library report. Ms. Ward.
Good evening. Librarian McCraw this past month had a couple of events. She had one for kids where she read them a couple of fall stories, and then they did some arts and crafts with making magnets and using apples and oranges to do like stamps with paint. And then later in the month, she had a couple of citizens, one citizen and one local student come to, it was Lady Sarah Paris. She read from her new book, Enchantment of Poetry. And then Gabriel Mancy, who he's only 14 years old, and he's already stretching his entrepreneurial skills with, he came and played the piano and sang, and I heard it was a really good performance.
Very good. Thank you. Board, any questions on the library report? All right. Thank you very much. Move to the town manager's report, Mr. Franzese.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. my written report focused on our town park project and where we stand with that. We're proceeding ahead of schedule. We will likely kind of catch up in the reverse and lose a little bit of time of being ahead related to the delivery of steel that's currently planned for mid-December for the middle part of the building, but perhaps a little sooner. But all in all, the project is moving along as we hope, and as I mentioned, we had our first inspection related to the part of grant. We had a commerce inspection or site visit scheduled as well, but that it was supposed to be next week, but it had to get rescheduled. So we'll look towards that one. There any questions about the park project?
They were out there working yesterday.
Yeah, and I think I sat in, was it last week, on the monthly progress meeting? And so everything is moving along. The big thing right now is getting the steel in for the pavilion. And so as soon as they get that in, they'll be ready to start setting steel, and I think you'll see a big difference out there.
We received some contributions, right?
Yes.
We have, so far, we've received, of course, in addition to the initial contribution several years ago that started this all off, but since we launched our project, we received $4,000 from our local Spencer Moose Lodge, which was very generous of them. The Civitan Club of Salisbury has awarded $1,500, so that's a total of $5,500 provided and $379,500 to go. There are several other groups out there that there's a couple more that we've sent letters to, but there's other groups and individuals that we are planning to generate some letters to continue to appeal. We're also talking with the Winterfest folks to establish a presence so that folks can get information about the project and learn how they can contribute to the future home of Winterfest while they're attending the event. And so that will continue. And I also am planning to do a campaign of sorts with our town staff to make sure everyone who is interested in being a part of the project as staff members able to participate as well.
Will we have a booth or anything at Winterfest for donations or?
That's what I'm hoping, and not that I don't know that we necessarily want to collect money, but we want to put out the information so folks can make sure they're aware of the opportunity and know how they can
Or make a pledge.
Yeah.
Great. No, that's wonderful. It's a good start, and look forward to many more folks getting involved. Okay.
And then the other thing I was going to mention, based on our discussion at the pre-agenda, asked for an update on, again, following up on the community meeting we had, and specifically on our communications and closing feedback loops, etc. And we have a staff meeting planned this week, I believe Thursday morning, to talk about our iWork system and make sure it's functioning the way we want it to, making sure both the information is flowing and then we have the ability to close the loops, but then also see how we can make sure that is getting back to the person who has submitted. Because currently there's the ability to look up a status on there manually, but it's not currently set up to send any kind of notifications back to people who have submitted on there. So that's something we want to check in the system with our software and work with our vendor to see how we can streamline that. We think that will help. In the meantime, I know a number of our, both Joel and Chief File have both talked about in the meantime, kind of manually closing the loop to make sure that we are giving people an update as we're able to. And some of the other ideas, we're going to continue to work on this, but we think as we're putting together our event schedule for next year, there's an opportunity to put together a few series of educational events, as we've mentioned, some sort of quarterly meeting where we can focus on a topic I would suggest that we start out in January or February with one that's maybe about how the budget works. So going into our budget season and even prior to our planning session, that we can invite the community to come and talk with us just so they can understand how we do it and how they can be involved in it and all those sorts of things. And quarterly throughout the year, several different topical sessions that function as a sort of citizens academy, but not as a whole program you have to commit to. It could be as needed on a quarterly basis, as have planned topics that folks can come in as they're interested. And then we can, in between those, have as we described earlier, something like a neighborhood walk where we can pick a designated area and get staff out there, get elected officials out there, and get community members out there to walk a few blocks and observe what's there and what might need to be fixed and what we can do about it, and continue to build those relationships with our community members. So those are a few initial ideas that I'm going to work on this with our staff and see how we can continue to build that thought out.
And I think that's so important. I mean, I think that what we heard from citizens was good information, insightful, and I think it was one of those things that we recognize we need to have more conversations like that. And that's a two-way street. It requires our citizens coming out like they did last week and, you know, being able to talk with us and have real conversations about the issues and concerns that they have, and even things that they like too, because we heard that as well. So I look forward to it. I think the more that we can be present and relatable to our citizens and spend time with them, the better. So, yeah, I'm appreciative for the citizens that came last week and reached out to us about meeting. And I'm really appreciative of our staff that took time to show up and those now that are responding to that as well. So lots of good stuff ahead, I think. So thank y'all. Board, any questions on the manager's report?
How many citizens did you have show up for that discussion about?
That's a great question. So we had about 10.
Oh, that's great. I figured it was.
And there were several that had wanted to come that were unable to come. So it was a very good, it was well attended.
Okay.
I got a question. I know in the second half of this quarter, we're gonna hire a new personnel. As far as, I don't know the terminology, I know it's recreation leader or whatever. Has any work been done on that?
So that's planned for the fourth quarter of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
The funding is there starting in April. What we're doing now, we're working through the process with PTRC on our salary or compensation and classification study.
Okay.
And as part of that, they are helping us put together a position classification. We filled out a questionnaire. I think they called it a position design. It was a helpful tool, and so we've got the information into them that they're going to be able to come back to us with a job description basically, and then also a market-based classification. Of course, we budgeted based on our estimation, and they're aware where we budgeted for this position. But yes, so we believe that by January or February, we'll be ready to start the recruitment process to hopefully get somebody in place when we have the funding available.
Okay. Now, since I got Mr. Morris here, I want to ask you a question relating to that. We were supposed to set up a board have we done that yet?
And it's simply been a bunch of not being here.
I realize that. I'm not putting you on the clock, but I was curious.
Joe, if you want to stand up at the lectern.
So, yeah, because I've been absent,
I understand.
we haven't had an opportunity to pursue that, but I'm back now. We'll put that at the forefront of our agenda.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's one of the things we talked about was making sure we got that advisory board in place before we made that hire to kind of help shape what we were looking for.
And part of having the advisory board is having a staff member that's assigned to be a liaison to the board.
Right.
Right. So and I think you already said you already had some people lined up for that. for that position?
We did that, creating outdoor recreation economies
Right.
plan last year. There are a number of people on that committee that would be really
Okay.
great for this kind of board. And they're Spencer residents, so it'd be nice.
Very good.
And so, on the topic of advisory boards, that was one of the things that came out of the meeting last week with citizens, is a need for possibly some additional advisory boards. And, there were a number of those that were recommended. I think the reality is for us to actually implement all of those would be very difficult because it takes a staff liaison to be able to work with them as well. But I do think there's a way potentially for some of those topic areas either to roll them under the purview of existing boards, or as we create new boards, looking for where we can kind of combine the responsibilities of a few of those into a single board. So all good. I think, for us to provide ways for our citizens to get involved and provide advice to us and feedback and input, but on the same token, it takes our citizens to actually be willing to get involved and be a part of those. So, I think we're committed to providing the opportunity. We just want to make sure that our citizens there you go, you're wearing the button.
I have probably about 30 of these. I'll be happy to give them, and you can put people on them and
That's right.
tell them they have to be
So
involved.
my ask is when we set these up, that our community does truly get involved and, pick something that you're interested in, and where you feel like you can make a difference in our community and get involved, jump head first into it.
On Steve's question, I met a young lady at early voting who was here to vote, and she's the new Parks and Recreation Director in Salisbury, and she's very, very nice, very, very pleasant to talk to, and she said if she could help us in any way, because I told her that at some point in the future we were going to be looking for someone for Parks and Recreation. Actually asked her how much money she got paid. and she was forthcoming. so
Very good. All right. Anything else for the town manager? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, board. So we'll move on to requests and comments from the mayor and board members, and we'll start again, as I had asked at our pre-agenda meeting, if during this time each board member can be prepared for any of the boards that you sit on and represent the town, that you can kind of give a report out on the status of those, whether that's the NPO or the EDC, those organizations that we're representing in the community as a direct liaison to the town. So that, Ms. Sledge, I know you're well prepared, so we'll start with you.
Well, I took a look at my calendar beginning on October the 9th, which was the day after our last board meeting, and went through the month to tell you how many things I had done that were pertinent to the town. The mayor doesn't want me to detail each one of these, but I did attend, I think, 4 different functions in conjunction with the Central Atlanta Council. We had an awards dinner, networking, and awards dinner at Cannonballer Stadium in Kannapolis, where the regional awards were presented this year. I met with the town staff and the EPA delegation to receive the presentation of that $1.5 million brownfields grant that was awarded to Central Atlanta for our region. I participated in a webinar with the Division of Aging, which was online and was about updates on Medicare changes for 2025. And I typically try to attend most of those webinars that they offer anytime they have one that's available. I attended and participated in the Central Atlanta Council seminar on brownfields, where Peter Francis and Steve Blunt presented the Yadkin River Small Area Plan with the Summit representative, the state and federal agencies and other communities in the region who will benefit from the EPA grant award. The Rowan Economic Development Council meeting was canceled due to a lack of quorum there. They meet tomorrow, so not tomorrow, Thursday, so I'll be attending that as a representative from the town of Spencer. I've attended the Chamber of Power and Partnerships breakfast, and I do that. Actually, that's something that I do kind of on my own. I pay my own membership to go to that, but as a part of the town's membership, I get a discounted rate to be able to participate in that. And that was the developer of the Red Rock project on Lone Ferry Road was the speaker, and he gave updates on the plans for the industrial development out along Ferry Road. I've met with, I sit on the board, sit on the advisory council with Civic Credit Union, and so I participated in a webinar that they had, a virtual meeting, and I also met here with the representatives to set up the co-location equipment that they put out in our lobby for members of the local government credit union and civic credit union members. So that's out in our lobby now. Let's see, what else? Rowan Municipal Association, that was the one that Peter talked about, and we've come up with some ideas to send there. And just I'm participating in the Winterfest meetings, and those are meeting twice a month now. And Patty and I are co-chairs for the volunteer aspect of it. So she and I are going to be knocking on doors and beating doors down to get people involved, Steve Miller. We need 4 people with hand trucks.
I've heard Mr. Miller's volunteered to be a chauffeur for certain special guests in a red suit.
Yes, I think I've heard that too. Participated in the Winterfest, not the trunk or treat, handing out information about the Doodah Parade and Winterfest out there, and I've also did that while I was working at the polls out front, handing out information on Winterfest and the Doodah Parade. So I have people from time to time tell me that they saw my picture on the paper, on the virtual digital stuff. So I don't know, I don't see those pictures, but people say, I saw your picture and you were there. So anyway, what I did want to mention though is a couple of things as a part of, and I wrote it down somewhere on the back of one of these. I wanted to be sure and thank everyone who came out and exercised their right to vote, especially the people who came for early voting. We had something over 5,500 people come here for early voting during that period. May have been actually more than that when it finally ended up. And then we had, I believe it was about 320 people come actually on election day here to our poll place. Wanted to remind everybody about the senior luncheon that's being held. That's December the 3rd for all Spencer residents over 55. And I mentioned Winterfest. It's coming up fast. It's the first weekend in December, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we are looking for more people to volunteer. Just if you can give us an hour or 2 hours at a stretch on one of those days, we'd be happy to have you. Doing things like bussing tables, maybe, or emptying garbage cans, or helping kids get skates off and on, or standing at the gates with a clicker, counting people coming through the gates, so that
we've got all kinds of jobs.
Yeah, there's plenty to do. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. And we need people for Skate Patrol too. So, and that's, I think, about all I have to say tonight.
Oh.
You want something else, Steve?
She stays busy. I may be regretting asking for those reports, huh? But thank you for all that you're doing and all that you're representing us in.
I try to be on my best behavior everywhere I go.
Mr. Muhammad.
Well, I don't think I can follow after Patty's report tonight, but met with the residents along with the mayor and couple of Peter and Mr. Miller and Joel. But all I can say is for the residents watching, the residents that are attending, make sure that you continue to stay informed, and if you have any questions or concerns, come to us and we'll try to resolve them. It may not be immediately, but we will make sure that we follow back up with you to try to rectify the situations in a prioritized mannerism.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miller?
Well, according to Mrs. Sledge, I don't really do anything compared to what she does. But I am a member of the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the TAs, and the TAC, which is Transportation Advisory Committee. I am the elected representative representing the town. We meet once a month down in Kannapolis, and we talk about construction projects going on with the any type of transportation needs, which consist of roads, their setups, also deals with railroad crossings and railroad issues, and also airports. And right now, Spencer has a few projects on the back burner. Right now, everything has been put kind of on hold because of all the problems we have out west as far as that goes. So, and on top of that, I'm not trying to degrade anybody, but our state legislatures don't want to spend a whole lot of money on roads. So unfortunately, we don't have the money to spend to update roads, and construction costs are going up, labor costs are going up, so we can't compete as far as that goes. So we are trying to do what we can, and we're trying to put our 2 cents worth in for Spencer, trying to help us out as far as that goes. But like I said, it's kind of, in some ways, it's kind of a hopeless matter as far as that goes. But we're trying as far as that goes. 2 little comments I'd like to make. I've been kind of an advisor on the parade board that's for the Spencer parade, and I'd like to thank all of their involvement as far as that goes. I've been real impressed in the last 3 months. They have really got a lot of things going, and it's going to be, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people, and I hope a lot of people come out for that parade as far as it goes. The only thing we're concerned about, it's a new time, it's a new location basically. It's after dark, and we're concerned about our neighbors in the area around the high school and Rowan Avenue, and you can just be real careful driving in those areas after dark, because we don't want anybody to get hurt, because there's going to be a lot of kids. I think we have a total of 7 high school bands in the parade, which is really remarkably good. So there's going to be a lot of kids involved. So I want to stress safety is the main thing. Come out and support the parade. I know we got food trucks coming out. I think that's going to be a plus. So I think, like I said, they've done a good job. Come out and support the parade. And one last comment I want to make. I'm going to brag on Kyle Harris. Kyle Harris goes out once a month and talks to people about landscape of the month. We recognize 2 landscapes of the month. And this past month in October, we recognized the best decorated yards for Halloween. And believe it or not, we had 2 winners that were side by side on the steeplechase trail. And you know, when you recognize these people, Kyle does a good job. He writes a letter and gives them a certificate and talks to them and everything else. And I think this person, and I'm going to mispronounce her name, but it's Flamio Mitros, something like that. That's close enough. But, you know, a lot of people are real shy about these awards. Some people are really, I think this guy really expressed his appreciation because he just lost his wife back in, I think, January from cancer. And all the decorations she had made herself. And even though she's not there, and this was her big thing. I think it's her hobby as far as that goes. And he decorates the house for her. And he said she's very talented. She's an artist, and this is mainly her main hobby as far as that goes. And he liked to express his thank you for the town and Kyle for recognizing for what she did.
Thanks. Thanks, Kyle. All right, Mr. Howe.
Yeah, I'm not gonna add to Mr. Miller. I'm the alternate on this board, so I'm not gonna supplement his report. But I would piggyback on that last comment. Well done, Kyle. Those are the kind of things I think add character to a community. I think, decoration contests and lighting things are, we need to do as many of those as possible. So well done. I think in terms of just again, building on the parade board, not formally serving on it, but kind of like Steve, been there to guide them and help them. They have done a phenomenal job. I think it's going to be something. I really do. It's going to be at night. It's different. And I think for all of us, after the fact, as we get through the holidays, I think everyone will be looking at ways to take what's there and build upon the foundation that's being laid. So any changes, suggestions, thoughts, comments, I think, they're going to be open to that. And then hopefully early next year, we'll get started, kind of like you guys do Winterfest and start running this early. So just food for thought on that. I think as a piggyback to that, and I was asking someone about the lighting the other day. I know most of the buildings with the lighting are now gone. I don't know if that's something that the town we should be paying for, but if there's a way to facilitate between, the Transportation Museum now has their property really well lit up, and they're really cool, and Winterfest and the parade, which is at night with lights, and it's going to be like Disney and Light Parade. If there's a way we can maybe facilitate getting everyone at the table and finding a way to work with the business and property owners to get those lights back up, I think would be I think Scott mentioned LED lights some years ago. We just never quite got off the ground, but there's a way to do that. I think maybe there's a way we can facilitate that or help. And just transitioning, Mr. Mayor, I do appreciate the invite on Wednesday. To the citizens, I sorry I didn't get a chance to meet with you. I was with my son at Polar Express rehearsal, so I did have a valid excuse, but I'm glad we met. That's wonderful you guys did that. I hope that bears fruit. I think just two more comments. So two things I mentioned on Thursday as we're planning for our meeting schedule for 2025. Just based on a conversation I had with a citizen, is it maybe we can consider moving that Thursday meeting to 6, making it a standard 6 o'clock. I know, honestly, even me at 5:30 a stretch for me to get here. You guys know I roll in at like 5. It's like 5:27. They're not usually very long. So, and I know maybe 5:30 facilitates you guys, staff are staying later. So maybe we leave it. But just for fall, should we consider putting that at 6, just for standard, so folks who can go, it's not different times or confusing. And our illustrious video man, he straightened me out last week. He kind of walked through the process with what's on the footage. I think the only thing is that, which is beyond his control, is that for us, for staff, anything as much as possible to get him to put on that screen, so the folks at home, or if we're sick, or if I'm sick, or you guys are out of town, everyone can see what, to the maximum extent possible, what's being shown. And again, that was another part of that conversation with the citizen, which I thought was a valid point. But he walked me through everything. He does a great job. I think for the most part, stuff's up there. But to the maximum extent possible, we all can to get that up. I think we need to try.
Good points. Mayor Pro Tem.
My primary responsibility as a board representative, I work with the schools and anything that they need, and they contact me, and I check in with them to see what we can do to help them. So that's a close relationship, and we try to meet any needs that they have. We've been very successful with doing that, even with things that are small to some things that are larger. So I'll continue to keep doing that. I've also been involved with the Winterfest with Pat since the last Winterfest was over, and we really are getting ready to get cranked up now. So expect some phone calls and texts and emails and messages on Messenger from me about contacting you if I think you would be a good volunteer, or if I think you would show some interest in it. And even if you don't think you're interested, I think if you'd come and try it, you would love it. It gives you a great chance to see children happy. And speaking of happy children, Trunk or Treat was just outstanding. And all of the people who were participating as the vendors with the open trunks could not believe how polite and nice the children were and how appreciative their parents were. So it really, really made me proud to see that event turn out as well as it did. And thank you, Kyle, for getting that organized. It was outstanding. You did a great job. That's the only thing, and I've been working some on the parade, but not as much as with Winterfest. So it's going to be a happy holiday, and the town's looking beautiful. We're turning into Christmas town. I love that. I think it's pretty. So that's it for me. I'm not as busy as Pat.
Thanks. I would say you're all great ambassadors of our town, so thank you for all you're doing. Couple quick updates on things I've been involved with over the course of the last month and report outs. Obviously, we've talked about our meeting with citizens last week on Wednesday, but a couple other things that have happened. We met, Pat was with me at the Central Carolina Regional Council offices on October the 15th. We had a visit from the EPA representatives from the regional office out of Atlanta. And I had an opportunity to speak for a few minutes and talk about our vision for the Yadkin River District as a part of the EPA Brownsfield grant program that we're a part of. Both Central Carolina and the City of Kannapolis got significant grants. We're a part of the Central Carolina grant that they got, in addition to Albemarle and I believe Mount Holly. And so that was a good opportunity to talk about the great things that we're planning and doing. And then on October the 31st, staff and I had a chance to meet with the current developer proposing to develop the Willow Creek property. So that was good to get to meet them and kind of hear about what their needs are, where they are at in the process, and try and build some goodwill with them towards moving that project along. I'm also on the North Carolina League's Legislative Policy Committee, and what that group is, an appointed group that gets together to basically set the agenda for what the league is going to push forward at the state level for their policies in initiatives, kind of like what we were talking about with the Rowan Municipal Association. So you have a handout showing those league policies. Those are the current league policies. We're shaping the 2025 policies right now. So there have been a series of meetings I participated in with that. And what I will let our citizens know is I continue to harp in those meetings about the need for additional transportation funding for municipalities and increased Powell bill funding. So that's a big one that we're advocating, and I'm not alone in advocating for that. The other things that have been going on today, we actually had a meeting, myself, Joe, and Peter, with representatives from the league, basically talking about advocacy, specifically with our, with the election just happening, and we have a new federal representative for our area, just kind of trying to strategize on ways to go about advocating for our projects and funding. It was a productive meeting. I don't know that we got any silver bullets to figure out how to solve some of those challenges, but regardless, it was productive. Other things that are going on, tomorrow I got a series of meetings, one with the town and the North Carolina Railroad. They have a grant program and are interested in talking with us more about our economic development projects, specifically in some grant funding opportunities that they have. And so that was lined up through the EDC and Scott Shelton. So we're appreciative for getting that meeting set up and what that might yield. And then we have a meeting with the parties that are interested in the Innovation Center that we talked about earlier. That meeting will be tomorrow afternoon as well to talk about next steps. And then on Thursday, I have a meeting with, I represent the Salisbury Transit Authority, And so I sit on that board as Spencer's representative, and so I'll be participating in that meeting in person on Thursday to get an update on where we stand with the micro transit system. That continues to make progress slowly, but does look like that will be implemented here soon. So we'll get an update on that. Once I have that, I'll share that out with the board next week or next month. And then I think that might just be it. That's pretty much it for now. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
One of the representatives from Central Iowa has had some grant money, I believe, for transportation, so,
Okay.
or for some transit or transportation. As soon as she sets up a time
Yes.
to meet, I'll be in touch with you about that.
Very good. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Board, is there any other agenda items or any other discussion? And if not, I know there is a need this evening to go into executive session for the purpose of negotiating the purchase of real property per North Carolina General Statute 143, Section 318.11. And we will need a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move we go into closed session.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Howe, second by Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All right, all opposed? All right, we stand in closed session this evening. Thank you all for coming. Staff, thank you all for your hard work. Board, 5 minute